You're listening to podcastjuice.net.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to podcastjuice.net. This is the Prince Podcast. This is your guy, Michael Dean, and I'm here today with a special guest. We got a special show in store for you. But before I say who that is, let me introduce to you, the co-host of the show, Mr. Big Sexy and Sack. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Got my relaxation on out here in sunny California for once. Not getting rained on, but I'm ready to go.
All right. Mr. Sean Hill, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, ready to get it on.
All right. Now, the special guest that we have today is one of the architects, one of the pioneers of the Minneapolis sound. Without further ado, Mr. Andre Cymone, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm blessed. I can't complain. So,
Good.
all right. So let's get this started. First thing I want to talk about is The Stone. So your current album that you have right now. How long has it been since your previous album to this?
Oof, my last album I released in 1985. So if math serves me correctly, I think it's like 28, 29 years, something like that.
Man, all right. So now you're back. It's 2014. First of all, let me say that I've listened to the album a couple of times. My cut off the album, I believe a song is called "It's All Right."
Oh,
If I'm
okay.
not mistaken. Yeah, that's the joint right there. I like that song, man. That's a very cool song. Now, tell me a little bit about you. It's like you did something different here, where you was it like a crowdsourced type of album that you did?
Oh, yeah. Well, we did kind of a crowdfunding kind of thing where we did. We raised some money on Pledge Music and got fans into it, and they helped me support this thing.
Now, was that something that they reached out to you, Pledge Music, or did you sort of see that was a platform that you could use? How did that work?
We saw it. I mean, I have a team. My wife is helps me put a lot of this stuff together. My manager and a couple other people that work with me. But we looked at a bunch of different things. We looked at what is it? There's another one.
Kickstarters.
Yeah, Kickstarter. Thank you. We looked at Kickstarter because there's a couple friends that tried some stuff on there. But Pledge Music seemed a lot more geared toward artists and musicians. So I thought I'd give that a shot.
Okay. How's the reception of the album been so far since you put it out?
It's been really, really good. I mean, I've been really blessed. It's been great. I mean, the reviews have been really, really good. So far it's been absolutely positive. I don't know that I've really gotten a bad review yet.
Okay.
So, obviously one thing that people say sometimes is, people would wish I'd do some, some of the old stuff that I used to do back in the day. But,
Right.
we all have to evolve. And the thing about it is, I've always been a very rock-oriented person. That's just sort of my personality. Fits rock and roll a lot more than some of the other stuff. And it doesn't mean that I won't, I won't ever do other stuff because I make all kinds of music. But, right now this is what I'm into. So.
Okay. I'll be straight honest with you. I'm one of them dudes who I live and breathe that 80s type funk. And so I feel I'm gonna accept whatever artists put down and support it. I just at some point I hope they realize, you guys realize, we the fans, if you was to just drop some older stuff, we'd probably all die. We'd be we'd lose.
Well, I have a whole bunch of that. I have a whole bunch of that stuff. I mean, straight off the cut. I mean, pure uncut.
Oh man.
Funk, that whole Minneapolis funk that, I have tons and tons of that. People they'd trip if they actually heard it because it's, it sounds like something straight off of either my record or the Time record or
Right.
some, old stuff that we did back in the Grand Central days. Because, obviously I used to do that stuff like I would breathe. But I just think that sometimes you just gotta try some different things and try breaking new ground. But I am definitely going to release some of that stuff. In fact, what I'm going to do with some of the people that pledged, and when I do pledge again, which I probably will do, I'm going to offer some of that stuff for people who are really into that. I'm just going to give them a whole little mixtape of just raw, uncut, unreleased Minneapolis funk, and I'm talking like funk. So yeah,
well,
that's for those who are really into that, and for those who are really fans. I got something for them.
Okay, well, like I said, let me know so I can give you my routing number and we can get that because it's going down. That's the easy sell.
No, I got you.
Okay, now, all right. So I want to go back. So first, I want to say to everybody, go get the Stone. I know it's on all the digital platforms. Question: are you releasing this on vinyl? Or has it been released on vinyl?
Oh yeah. We definitely released it on vinyl. It's you can get it on vinyl. You can get it on CD. You can get it download it.
Okay.
I think you might even be able to get it on cassette.
Whoa, that'd be hilarious.
Somebody said they got it on cassette. I mean, I didn't release it on cassette, but
wow.
Somebody said, "Man, I got the Stone on cassette." I'm like, okay. I wasn't going to argue. I don't know where you got it from.
You just said, man, quit lying. You ain't got no damn cassette.
Quit lying.
Now, I know recently you did some shows in New York. I believe it was last week.
Mm-hmm.
You were in New York. And one of my partners over there who was cool with Questing them, my understanding, did you go over to the Questlove where he does that school, I think, or something, the class on Prince or something like that?
Yeah. Definitely. That was great, man. It was like... it was a trip because I could tell, there was a couple of things, because I stopped doing interviews in 1985, back when I did a few interviews on, with the release of the record, but everybody kept asking me, sort of, they were trying to create this whole, me against Prince kind of thing. And, I just wasn't feeling that because that's just not, it ain't even about that. And, I respect Prince and I, always did, always have, I'm sure I always will. As a person, as an artist, and I think a lot of times people got our whole thing wrong, because I mean the reality is we literally came up together, I think we inspired each other. We lived in the same house, used to bounce ideas off of each other, and so when people would say things like I know Andre wrote this song and I know Andre wrote that song, and I mean. I think I was very much involved in writing different songs that people were privy. They heard them. They heard songs that I wrote. So I can understand where they came from, but I wasn't looking at it like, I ripped Prince off or anything like that, or he ripped me off or whatever, kind of way people try to twist it. Because I think, I learned a lot about, how I learned how to play guitar, and even how I learned to play keyboards a little bit in terms of, my chord phrasings. But obviously, I came with the bass thing and bass lines, and, and then came, with my own little guitar, style, and, and was able to come up with some, some very interesting, very unique ways of bending the synth. They gave it a very identifiable sound. So, I can understand where people are coming from, but I just think that you can't take credit for something when everybody's in there, cooking the same dish. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So, I just never looked at it like that. And I don't like trying to say, I did this, but it's just, I think because I'm so raw, I mean, I just tell it how it is.
Okay.
People think that, there's no way that could be possible. It's like, well, yeah, there is a way it could be possible. And I think, when you take, a lot of time off without, doing a whole lot of talking, and you kind of let the music do the talking, then people start going, hey, wait a second, because, obviously Prince has been releasing a lot of records and people know what he delivers. I mean, you can get a real sense of, okay, so that's Prince. And I take a lot of time off and then I come out with the Stone and people go, okay, that sounds right. It's like, and all the stuff in between, the Adam Ant stuff, the Jody Watley stuff, the Tina Turner, the Tom Jones, the Days of Thunder, I mean, on and on, different things that I've done. People start going, oh, and even, I don't know if T.C. Carson, the guy that was a Living Single. Yeah. I did a jazz record with him and Patrice Rushen and Dubu. And so it's just straight jazz. And you wouldn't even know that it's Minneapolis thing because I just get into doing it. And I don't try to give people necessarily a sound, the Minneapolis sound, although, I think Jody's thing was kind of that vibe because that's kind of what was going on at the time. But, I just try to stretch out and do different things. And I think, with all this time that's passed, people can really kind of see the stark difference between, what I bring to, I guess, what people are calling the Minneapolis sound and what Prince, brought to his version of the Minneapolis sound. And people can, maybe respect us, at this point now for the two individuals that we are.
Mm-hmm. I get what you're saying in terms like you came as you're a musician, and as a musician, if the Minneapolis sound is what's popping right now and that's what I created, cool, that's what I'm doing. Now I'm gonna move into this.
Right.
This is what I'm doing. But as a musician, I do all styles. I do music. That's the style, right?
Yeah, it's just exactly. That's what it's all about.
I feel that, and it's interesting to me. Like yourself, another cat that I really admire, Jesse Johnson. Was like, it seemed like at a certain point, from the outside looking in, it's like, man, these cats disappeared. Where'd they go? But as you were saying, and as we do the research, it's like, no, these dudes, they've been in the studio. They've been putting in work. They did all this stuff behind the scenes, and it didn't sound like the sound you associated with them. They were just doing what needed to be done at that time, but the work is extensive. The work ethic is there. So I respect that. And I want to go back. So you brought up some Prince stuff. I definitely want to get into that, but I want to go all the way back to, I believe the school you was, is it John Hay Elementary? Is that where you?
No, I didn't go. I didn't go to John Hay. Those guys, Harry and Prince, and I think Charles and some of the guys. I came from the projects, so I went to Harrison, which is, the other side, literally the other side of the railroad track.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go back to Harrison. Like, what got you into music? And I what I mean by that is, I know a lot of times from myself and different people, our parents a very strong influence in the things that we got into or sort of sparked things for us. And my understanding is that your dad was a musician. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Well, a few things actually I'd have to say. I mean, because I'm the youngest of 6.
Okay.
And so, I had, 2 older brothers and 3 older sisters. And they all were into music. I mean, they were, I had a very colorful family. They were into a lot of different things. Some of them illegal, some of them, barely legal, and all
For
kinds
sure.
of, and everything in between.
All right.
So you have all of that. And you have my dad, who was definitely a jazz musician. And then my mom was into, strangely enough, my mom was into that gut bucket blues and that raunchy Rudy Ray Moore, and, Millie Jackson. She came with all the borderline straight pornography type. It was rough,
Wow.
but I wasn't supposed to listen to it, but she wasn't stopping me, so But yeah, so I have all of that, had a lot to do with me as an individual and the kind of just the kind of headspace that I came with. And, coming from the projects, I was a hustler. You had to be, because you're trying to figure out how you can come up. So, you're trying to do things. And, once I got into music, it's like, okay, well, I'm into music. How can I make some money? Because, I was making money hustling. But, it's like, okay, I'm doing this music. How can I make money doing music? Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do this because I got to make money.
Right.
So, it became a thing where, every time I was like, well, we got to make some money. How we going to, let's go do a gig. My mom was very tied into the community. And again, having, being the youngest and having other sisters and brothers that were into a lot of different things, they're like, man, I'm having a barbecue. Why don't you come and play at my barbecue party? Get your boys. I was like, okay. How much you going to pay me?
Right.
I'll break y'all off $15. I'm like, ooh, $15? I'm in. So it was like that, that was just the reality of the way it started, and that's just the very beginning. And again, I also started off, doing that whole, my sister used to do these, cause she was a cheerleader and, really popular in high school and all that kind of stuff. So she'd have me doing these quarter parties, where I'd be the entertainment. She'd put on Jackie Wilson and I'd do the 4-way splits and drop to my knees and pop back up and spin, about 4 or 5 times. I was like, I thought I could take Michael Jackson, because I remember when I saw Jackson 5, I was telling everybody, man, because they were talking about how great he was, man. I was like, man, I never seen him do the 4-way split. I'll eat him up. And I couldn't wait, And then I realized, I might need to learn how to play an instrument. So, and this was even before I met Prince and the rest of those guys. I was in talent shows and doing that whole thing before all of that, and I was already into the Beatles and blues and already into rock and roll, Little Richard, and just, Jerry, I was into all of that kind of stuff back then. That's the stuff that I was dancing to.
Right. Real quick, what got you to pick up an instrument, and what instrument was that? The first one.
Well, my dad played bass, and so he had an upright bass at the house all the time, and in fact, I eventually wound up breaking it, and but that's what got me into that aspect. And then, obviously at Harrison, they had a music program, so I learned how to play horns. In fact, I learned how to play like three different. I played saxophone, I played trumpet, and I played trombone. So when we moved, I already knew how to play bass. I already knew how to play three different horns, and my sister had a little broke down organ which I could play. And then I had a cousin who finally, because I would go over to his house, because all my seems like my cousins, they had, their parents were hooked up. One of my cousins' dad was a Cadillac salesman, still is actually. But when I was a little kid, he was a Cadillac salesman. And then, my other cousins, man, they had every kind. They had drums and keyboards and pianos, and they didn't live in the projects. We didn't have nothing. So I would go over there, and I begged my cousin for this guitar, because he got it for Christmas, and he never played it. So every time I'd always wanted, can we go over to Aaron's house? And I'd always beg to go over to his house. And, finally he broke enough strings that he finally said, all right, you can have it. I was like, cool. And that was how I got my first guitar. It was just, and it was still broke down. It could only have 4 strings, and they weren't even the 4 strings in succession. They were just 4 strings on the guitar. So I was trying to figure it out, and nobody really showed me, and I had to, learn myself on those 4 strings. And then eventually, I was able to, my mom actually bought me my first real bass.
Okay. Now, I'm just curious, you said your dad played bass. Like, was he sort of like, okay, my son, he picking up the guitar or the bass? I mean, was he sort of like amazed by that, or just sort of natural for you to get into that? Or
in a word, no. Not even a little bit. I mean, you'd think, and it's nothing against him. It's just, he was, I think he was already, he tried to do music and it didn't maybe work out.
Okay.
And so maybe he just didn't want to push that thing, because it seemed like, coming from that perspective, he came from a really small town as it is, maybe that's kind of a big dream for somebody to really, think it's possible. But, I've always been a very enthusiastic dreamer. So there was no way, I never had any doubt in my mind ever that, I was one day going to be doing what I'm doing, what I've always been doing, because that's all I've ever done in my whole life. I've never worked a job outside of music. So, I just, that's all I've ever wanted to do, and that's all I've ever done. But my dad is a different story. He worked at the post office. He was in the Army,
Okay.
He worked at worked at one of the first, sort of computer, like they call it Control Data, which was one of the first computer companies ever. So, so he was just into other stuff. And, so me coming along, he finally didn't realize that I was serious until I think he saw us play at one of the outdoor community centers.
Okay.
And then he saw us, and we killed it. But I had they used to call me Bass Hendrix, because I had all these different gizmos and wah-wahs and fuzzes on my bass. So when I did a solo, you'd have thought it was a guitar solo, because I click, 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 click. So yeah.
Right on.
And he was like, you need to take all that stuff off. I couldn't even tell what you was playing with all that stuff on. And then that's when I realized, you know what, dude? No, I don't know if I'm listening to you.
So what you need to do is,
exactly.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. So, fast forward a little bit. So, talk to me like you first time you meet Prince, you guys are in school together. And I understand that your fathers had some sort of connection, which I don't know if you guys knew at that particular time, but what was it like when you first met Prince?
Well, like I said, it was like, it was 7th grade. I just, 6th grade is, Harrison, it ends and then it goes, it's then it goes to junior high school, and so you had to leave there. We moved anyway, so we moved into a different neighborhood. So I had to go to a different school. I started 7th grade at Lincoln, and they have the whole roll call, and you pick your classes and all that kind of stuff, and they do it in the gymnasium. And so I was in the gymnasium, and I remember Mr. Lee, who was the gym teacher, he was like, he called me up and called my name, and I had to go up there, and he gave me my whole, class, scenario, and he said, all right, go stand against the wall. And I remember looking at the wall, and, and it's funny because, sometimes you never know what that, when that moment is a defining moment sort of in your life, and I guess that was probably mine, maybe unwittingly or whatever. Because I remember looking down at this lineup of people, and thinking, God, because I didn't know any of them, none of them. They were all strangers to me. And it looked like a lot of mugshot lineup of just, because I was like, damn. And I just looked all along, and I looked at all of them, and I was going, I was trying to see if I saw a familiar face or something that jumped out. And I saw this little dude, and I thought, I'm going to stand next to him. And so I went and stood next to him, and, and we started talking. And I said, listen, what's your name? He said, Prince. He's like, what's your name? We went back and forth, and he said, what are you into? I said, I'm into music. I said, what are you? He said, I'm into music. And we went back and forth. I said, what do you play? He said, keyboards, guitar. I said, oh, that's funny. I play bass and, horns and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, wow. And so, he was like, you want to come by and jam? And I was like, sure. He said, my dad has some equipment. And I was like, yeah. So I think it was either that it might have been that particular day after school. We went over to his dad's house and jammed. And his dad had a little apartment. It wasn't even, I think, 1-bedroom apartment with nothing in the living room but a piano and a dope stereo system. One of those from back in the day I think it was all white with 2 round speakers. It was really cool. Man. Space age looking, right? And but he had the piano and he had a little 4-string guitar, which it was interesting for me because the only thing I knew how to play was a 4-string guitar, but not like I said, the strings were so so I started playing that, and he's like, oh, okay, and then he started playing the piano, and we started jamming, and he was like started playing Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Batman and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, this dude can play. So we were just having fun. We were just jamming. We were going, yeah, And so when I was sitting there and I looked, his dad had all these pictures of his dad, I guess, in different, configurations of bands, I guess, that he was in or whatever. But I looked on the piano and I saw this one guy. I said, God, that looks like my dad, except he's got hair, and I was like, and I kept going, but I thought, this is my dad. It looks like my dad. And he said, well, ask my dad when he comes in. Because he said he'll be coming in pretty soon. So I was like, okay. So his dad came in, and he looked at me like, who's this in my house? And yeah, Prince introduced me, and he was like, Dad is Andre is my dad. I was like, how you doing? Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I said, excuse me, but who is this in this picture? And he looked at the picture, and he looked at me, and he looked at the picture, and he looked at me, and he just started laughing. He's like, oh my God. Oh my God. I was like, what? He said, you Fred Anderson's son. I was like, yeah. He said, oh my God. And he looked at Prince, and he had a nickname for him, and but he said, you boys used to play together when you was little. Wow. And I was like, what? It turns out, he said, man, me and your dad used to play together, man. He was in my band and blah, 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 blah. They went on, and I was like, what? So it was just a complete coincidence. And, and then I went home and I told my dad, and my dad almost fell out of his chair. My dad couldn't believe it. He's like, what? He's like, I told my mom, and she's like, what are the chances of that?
Right.
And then eventually, we became, best friends and hung out and put together the band. Mm-hmm. But, like I said, I came from the other side of the railroad tracks, and, I was really into, some real street stuff, stealing cars and, just stealing anything that, that I could maybe make some money from. But anyway, I found myself in white on white, brand new, spanking new Cadillac. And so I thought maybe, you know, I could take my new friend for a ride. So I pull up at his crib, you know, and I'm honking the horn, and I'm thinking he's going to come running out and, you know, jump on in, and we're going to go for a joyride. Only problem is his mom comes out. His mom's like, whose car is that? And I'm like literally 14, hardly looking over the dashboard. And I'm like, got to think of a lie.
It was a
I'm like, it's my Uncle Tommy's car. And she's like, your Uncle Tommy? I know your Uncle Tommy. And that ain't his car. If that was his car, he wouldn't be letting you drive it.
Oh, boy.
And so that was it. She said, you can't hang around him anymore. They called me the Project Negro. I mean, a little different than Negro, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I mean, nobody wanted their kids hanging around me because, you know, everything, you know, I mean, every, you know, there was like, I mean, bikes were disappearing in the neighborhood, and I was always getting blamed. And so, but anyway, so eventually they really didn't want to hang around with me, and they would make him do all kinds of stuff, you know, and just to not, you know, for him not to be able to hang around. And eventually he just wound up running away and came and lived with us. So,
wow.
You know, so I guess
he was out there thugging, man. Like,
hey, you know, I mean, I was just trying to make some money.
I feel you.
It ain't never fun being broke. I'll tell you that.
It ain't.
Amen.
Broke is, yeah.
So, I think this is interesting. Like, so you guys become boys, basically. Like, when does it, you know, and you can stop whenever you want to talk about it, but I mean, what was it going on for him where your boy's like, yo, man, I need to like come stay with y'all? You said he ran away from home, and was this just his situation was just crazy? And
yeah, it was crazy. I mean, he had you know, he had a stepdad, you know, and I, you know, obviously you can get into his story, but this is just, you know,
I know, I'm just saying for your side, right?
It's just my, you know, where I'm at, you know, because I'm living my life, and I'm just trying to make it from point A to point B.
For sure.
And so, you know, I wind up meeting this brother, and then we become friends, and, you know, we want to hang, we want to do a band, and he had a stepdad that was making that, you know, almost virtually impossible, you know, because he was making him do all kinds of, you know, household, you know, dumb stuff, you know.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, it just gets to a point where, you know, you start going, okay, this don't make any sense. So, but anyway, I mean, you know, so he comes lives with us.
Now,
and
I mean,
we get to make music.
How was your mom? Had to be, you know, a special type of person. I mean, it's like she was like, yeah, come on in. You know, we got a place.
No, absolutely. Well, you know, the thing about it is we were that house anyway. When we became that house for all the kids in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Came and stayed because, like I said, I mean, I was like that when we lived in the projects. All the kids in the neighborhood used to come to my house when I lived there.
Okay.
You know, and then, you know, obviously when we moved, because I was like, you know, even when I lived in the projects, I was the kid that, you know, was climbing on the roofs, getting all the balls out of the gutter, and like, you know, footballs. I mean, I had literally bags and bags of balls, baseballs, footballs, darts and everything else. Because, you know, the roofs were kind of high, and I would climb up on there and just, you know, I mean, I used to climb through the attics. I was just adventurous. People would actually literally come to my house and bring me money to say, listen, here, I got a quarter. What can we do today? And I would say, okay, let's go to the creek. And I would take them to the creek, and they'd see me, you know, pulling a rope, and they're like, "Oh no, what's he doing now?" And I'd pull this rope out, and on the end of the rope was a bicycle. So I literally pull a bike out of the creek, and they're like, "Where'd you get that from?" You know, I just found that somebody left it sitting there, so
wow.
You know, I had to let it cool off for a minute. You know, so, and then, you know, I mean, I also, you know, I mean, when we moved into the other neighborhood, you know, there used to be there was this a golf course, you know, it's at the, you know, the end of the, you know, it's like the streets were in alphabetical order. And then when you got to Xerxes, then there was a golf course. And then the golf course had all these golf carts, and they were parked up on top of this hill. I, from one of my other thug friends, got the key and stole one of the golf carts, man. And I was riding it around the neighborhood, and everybody in the neighborhood was all on the back of the golf cart. And, you know, I mean, they were. I was like the Pied Piper of the neighborhood.
Y'all
I mean,
was acting a fool.
I was like, yeah. And then I thought, you know, you want to hear something funny? I thought, man, I parked it in my sister's garage. I said, I'm gonna paint it.
Oh,
nobody's ever gonna know that I stole the only missing golf cart in the neighborhood for painted black, driving around, and nobody's ever going to know. I mean, literally, I think Perry, was one of the band members, was laughing so hard. It took me a while to understand what he was laughing about. Because he's like, what you gonna put? He said, what you gonna? He made it even funny, and I was like, yeah, because I didn't realize he was winding me up. He said, well, you gonna put some racing stripes on it, huh? I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. He said, well, you gonna put some zebra stripes? I was like, yeah. He said, man, what makes you think that they ain't gonna know that that's the only one missing?
Wow, boy.
So anyway, yeah, I got back on it. Everybody jumped back on back, and the cops came, and they, everybody ran about 15 different directions, and that was that. But yeah.
Wow. All right, man. Grand Central. So This is the band. Now, is this the first band that you guys sort of had together? Was this was what, Charles Smith, yourself? Now, was Charles the drummer?
Yeah, Charles is the drummer. Charles is Prince's cousin. Okay. And me and Prince said, actually, it was me and Prince and this guy named, I think it was Shaw. His last name was Shaw. God, what was his name? I know his brother's name is Lonnie Shaw. Why am I not thinking of his name? But anyway, we decided to start a band because he played horns, I played horn. And then we got, I said my sister played keys. And, at the time, when we first started it, it was a guy named Lynn Perry and a guy named Jerome Dunham. And we did our first gig at this church called the People's Church. And, that was our first gig. And but we weren't called Grand Central then. We were trying to find different names, and, we won the first battle of the bands. And I didn't know because Charles he became our leader because he was the oldest of the band. Okay. But, so he became, sort of the de facto leader. So he was just naming the band anything he wanted. So the first name of our band, which I didn't know anything about until after we won the Battle of the Bands, and they announced the winner is Charles, Cousin, and Friends. Like, whoa. So now I'm just somebody's friend? And that ain't the name of our band. We won, which was great, but, I was like, so then I came up with the name Soul Explosion. Okay. So then I thought the name was Soul Explosion, and so we did another Battle of the Bands. And then, I thought we entered the band, because I thought we'd all agreed that it was Soul Explosion. So we won that Battle of the Bands. But when they announced the winner, they said, and the winner is Phoenix. And we were like, oh, man, we lost. And Charles was like, no, we didn't. We won. I was like, what do you mean we won? Yeah, I changed our name to Phoenix. I was like, wow. Oh, man. So then eventually, Prince, who was going to Grand Central, or going to Central High School, and he was in the Grand Funk Railroad, came up with the name Grand Central. Okay. And that's how we came up with Grand Central. And I thought, that's cool. And that became the name of our group, and that was the name we used for the most, for the bulk of, the Grand Central heyday.
Okay. Now, how did Morris get into this group?
Morris was, it's funny because when I graduated from Lincoln and then I had to go to North High, because Morris was older than me. So, when I graduated, I think, you go from 9th to 10th grade, you got to go to a different school. So I had to go to North High, and he was already there. And I didn't know anybody. I was just walking around. I mean, my sisters went there. They were older than me too, but they were already going there. But Morris I'd seen him by the side of the stage, and he kept on saying, hey, man, you should check me out. I play the drums. And he always came to me, because I don't know why, I guess somebody probably told him, Andre's the guy you need to talk to, blah, 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 blah. And so he came up to me and he's like, kept telling me that he was his drummer. And I was like, man, we already got a drummer. He said, yeah, but I'm better than your drummer. And he kept going on. I was like, yeah, right. And so he kept bugging me. And one day in school, he came up to me and I was walking in the hallway. He said, man, you got to hear me play, man. And I was like, he said, come to the band room. They got a drum set up in there. I was like, all right, cool. So we went to the band room and he started playing, and the drums were on top of the riser. And he started kicking a beat. The only problem is the drums weren't on any kind of, a carpet or anything. So they were slipping and sliding, and eventually they just fell down the stairs. And then I thought, oh, no, they're going to blame me because I'm the project. I'm the project Negro. And everything I do, they always point the finger at me. It's like, he's the one, because, right. might have been because maybe a couple of weeks before that there was a car incident and the car got slammed in this. Anyway, another story. But everybody said they saw me run out of the car, and I don't know why, but they say that I had that same Gilligan hat on that I like to wear back then. And I said, well, there's other people with hats like that. Anyway, but I thought they're going to blame me for this. So I thought, So he said, well, come to my crib, man. You got to hear me play. And I'm like, I don't go to dudes' crib, man. And he's like, no, it ain't like that. I was like, it's just, you got to come hear me play. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I said, cool. So we walked over to his crib, and his crib actually wasn't that far from school. But we went over there, and he had a nice crib, man. And his mom was like Pam Grier. I fell in love with his mom on the spot. I mean, that could have sealed the deal right there.
The mama was fine, too.
But he started playing, man, and dude played what is hit lick for lick. I mean, Tower Power, I mean, he put it on, and he just played that lick for lick, and I'm like, this is our new drummer. This is it.
Wow.
I said, you got to come down to our, to where we're practicing, man. Bring your drums. And so he brought him down, and we moved Charles's drums, over, which is, too bad because, me and Charles had a problem right before that, which is, had to do with that, the last battle of the bands we had because, we obviously we made a little bit of money and then we never saw the money, and Charles was the leader, so he was holding the money, and I was like, I want to see the money because I'm, again, I'm the hustler. I'm like,
I need
you
mine.
make money, you want to know, I didn't get broke off no money, so it's like if we're saving it for some gear, good. I want to see, but I still want to see it to know that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was never wanting to show it to nobody, and we kept asking, and he said he had it, but then he had new pants, and then he had new albums and posters, and and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, now I really want to see it, and he never showed it. So I was like, we got into a big argument, and all that other kind of stuff, and I think we literally got into a fight. And so, and it was all over that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, we got a new drummer now. So, and then, I had Prince and those guys come check him out. Mm-hmm. And everybody, was like, yeah, this is the dude. So and plus, he had a bass. He had a brand new Fender Telecaster, white Telecaster bass. This thing was beautiful. So on top of a new drummer, I also got a new bass. So,
That's how you did that.
I mean, So anyway, that's how Morris became part of Grand Central.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that it morphed into, was it called Champagne? Is that?
Yeah. Well, we started doing, we kept winning Battle of the Bands, and what they would do is we would get, some of them would pay us some money, some of them would give us, some time at recording studios, and we got some time at a recording studio. I actually had a few different. One was Sound 80, and one was this Moon Sound recording studio. Mm-hmm. And the guy in there, his name was Chris Moon. And, he was like, you guys are really good. And he approached me and said, listen, I got some stuff. If you're interested, you can come to the studio and write some songs with me and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, man, I'm in a band. We're in a band. And, we talked to our manager, and I think he was trying to get around the manager thing, And he finally, I think he talked to Prince, and Prince probably was like, yeah, I'll do it. And so Prince kind of broke away and started doing some stuff separate and apart from the band. I obviously knew it because, he lived with us. So, and
how did you feel about
pick
that?
Him up.
How was it? How did you guys feel about that? Like,
well, me personally, again, I'm a hustler. So I'm like, do whatever I've always had the attitude, because that's what I get from my brothers, man. Yeah, you got to make some money. Do what you got to do to make some money. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if he's going to pay you, you go do it.
For sure.
And I'm not mad at you. I wasn't mad at him. It wasn't like, because we were still tight, Mm-hmm. So I knew what was going on, but everybody else didn't necessarily know what was going on. Okay. And then he started doing demos, and then he got a thing, and they were trying to help him get some kind of a publishing thing. So, it became, it did start to get a little bit weird because, then, we got into, it got really, crazy because Morris's mom became our manager. Okay. So it got really crazy with that because we would have these meetings, and Prince would start getting, asking a lot of questions about, because we signed this really interesting sort of corporation contract, because we never made any money, and we never, if you quit, you only got, I think, $200 or $300, and you didn't get any of your equipment. And so it just was a real weird kind of deal,
funny style or something.
Yeah, and so he finally just said, you know what, I'm going to go with these guys over here. And I'm like, cool. So when he quit, we changed the name because, since he came up with the name Grand Central, it didn't seem like it was right to keep calling ourselves Grand Central. Mm-hmm. So we said, we'll change our name. And I think, I think there's something about Champaign, Illinois or something like that, because I think, I don't know if that's where Morris or his mom and those guys came from or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But that became kind of the name, or I don't know if it's named after the champagne in some different kind of way. I mean, because at that point I was pretty much, I wasn't all the way into it because me and Prince were really tight. So I was in it, and we found another guitar player, but it just wasn't the same because, the guitar player wasn't nothing like Prince. And so I remember we did the first gig after that. It was weird because we had to go all the way up to Duluth, and it's funny. It was the first time I ever drank beer because I just didn't, I was never a drinker and all that kind of, didn't get involved in all that stuff. But I remember on the way, because the other guys, they were drinking beer and all that other kind of stuff, and I just wasn't into it. But the first time, in fact, me and Prince we were kind of like, at the time, not into all that, and they were into drinking, and we were kind of the two that were kind of like, wow, man, we're going to be serious. And they were like, and so I just thought, you know what, I didn't have my sidekick. So I was like, let me give it a shot. And they would drink a whole 6-pack. And I'm like, how do you guys drink a whole 6-pack? I'm like, I can't even get, through one can, of this stuff that, in my opinion, at that time, I thought tastes like what I would imagine pee tastes like. So I'm like, I can't, this stuff is like, I didn't feel sophisticated. So I thought, no. I mean, obviously now it's a little different. I've learned that, beer is an acquired taste, and I have acquired somewhat of a taste for the brew. But hey, but yeah, so we went up there, and that gig was disastrous. So that was pretty much it for me. I don't even know if I did too many more gigs after that, but that's how we became Champaign.
All right. So, and you said, we're not going to retread a lot of this history that's out there, but, Prince does his thing. He gets to the point where he gets his first deal and start to work on that first record. Now, does he go to, I think, the Bay Area to record, and you go with him? Is that right? Like, you guys go out there together?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The first thing was that, he got the deal, and, it's funny. I remember we were on the bus. We were riding the bus right down, I think it was Lindale or Hennepin, one of those. But, and he was like, man, look, we should do this thing together. Do like a Brothers Johnson kind of thing.
Okay.
Because we were, I can understand where he was coming from, but, I'm like, dude, they signed you. And, this is, again, to go to, people trying to pit us one against the other, man. I'm like, if you can this is your thing. You got... they signed you, and the stuff that he was writing at the time was really, really on point. I mean, he had really honed in on this thing. We had a way of recording, and I think he was the first one to do it, where we would go record from cassette to cassette, and we'd work out our ideas, and, we were living at my mom's house. He'd write a song, and because he was he lived in the basement. His room was in the basement. We started off trying to stay in the same room, and that didn't work out. So my mom moved him to the basement and moved me to the attic, and then moved my sisters and gave them the room that we had. And so, but he'd play something, he'd come up there and play it to me, and then I'd come down, play him a song, and we'd go back and forth, and, and we'd, do this cassette to cassette thing, and it was his. I mean, I still have some of those cassettes, but it would be these songs that, that's how you honed in on doing the, playing all the different instruments kind of thing.
Right.
Because, we had a drum set. I mean, my sister had a drum set. Pieces of my cousin's drum set was down there. So, she had Prince still had his dad's Farfisa. So, it was really a great time. And it was great for creativity because my brother, one of my brothers was a hustler that he would get every kind of book because he was, kind of a booster. So he would go, anything that you'd say you were into. If you said, I'm into tantric sex, he'd come back with about 10 books about how to circular breathe. I mean, it was crazy, man. But it was really cool because, and if we said we wanted to get into music, he'd come back with 10 books about how to be effective and how to, how to save your money and how to, all the stuff that we probably should have listened to, but we didn't. And he would sit there and he'd read them to us and tell us how we needed to do it. And he actually was Prince's first manager. So, I mean, it's just, a lot of stuff that people just really don't know. That's one of the things you were asking about, Questlove's class. It's like, I mean, I think he was probably tripping because it's like, a lot of stuff that people think they knew or thought they knew. It's like, that ain't quite right.
Right.
But the thing is, it's my life. I mean, I'm living my life, and just, all the different people that come into my life, and they become part of my story.
Right.
And it's not like I'm trying to tell stories or anything like that, but we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's your journey, man. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, man. And growing up in that time period was, I mean, I can't even tell you, man. It was a blast. I mean, really. I mean, I've toured the world and I've done all kinds of stuff and blah 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 blah. But the funnest times that we had, I mean, the coolest, times were when we were at Grand Central playing a lot of those little local. There was so many things that used to happen, so many really hilarious things that, I mean, I could bore you guys with story after story.
No, you ain't boring.
Because some of that stuff was just, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess when when things turn out the way that they turn out, it becomes very interesting, and then you start to be able to sort of piece these things together, and then you start to understand, how this stuff, actually could come about.
Let me ask you this. Well, one thing I wanted to say too, I think what's great about this, and it's just at the time that we're at now, because, a lot of the stuff that you guys did, for whatever reasons, a lot of it seems to be shrouded in secrecy or just never had the opportunity to really put it out there. And the stories always be written by somebody who wasn't there. So it's good to be able to, it's good to hear straight from your mouth, like, this is how it really went down. Because again, a lot of us don't know and just never was able to get the information. So that's why I think it's great now that, let my man tell his story. Let's hear what really was popping. What was the relationships like? I gather just looking at it now, and I'm a little older, so I can sort of look at things a little differently, is that, what? Them cats was basically like brothers. And it was like one person got put on, and it was like, yo, of course, let's go. You a part of this? Let's go do this thing. It's just a trip that the stuff that you guys did ends up becoming like this worldwide, thing, and it just goes so big. Like I was wondering earlier, I said, did you ever imagine when y'all was playing the cassette tapes back and forth, you ever thought that all of that would be somebody teaching a class on that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I never, it's funny. I never thought that. But I will say that I never had a doubt ever in my mind that we were going to be successful. Okay. I mean, and it's funny because I remember one time, I think we were coming back from one of the gigs we did, because oddly enough, some of the times we'd play a gig when we would leave, I mean, eventually, when you get successful, you have roadies, you get a ride, and
right.
But we would come from gigs and we'd have to carry our equipment home.
Wow.
We'd have to literally walk down the street carrying drums with no cases and guitars over your back and, walk blocks. And
right.
I remember we were walking home from one of the gigs, and I remember it was the first time I ever saw a shooting star. And I remember, not long before I saw that, somebody saying, hey, if you wish on a shooting star, your wish will come true. And I remember seeing that shooting star saying, you know what? I want our band to be successful. And for some reason, that was it. When I saw that shooting star, I was like, man, we're going to make it. I just saw a shooting star. And those guys always thought I was crazy anyway, because I was that excitable. Man, we're going to do this, man. Wait till we get big. Wait till we get, I was always that kid, man, when we get big, I'm going to have a big car. And I was always talking a bunch of trash and, and that was me.
Right,
yeah.
Right. What, this is one thing I always wondered too, and this is something Yeah, I'm gonna jump around a little bit here, but now, I know you weren't in Purple Rain, but me, I was young at the time when I saw Purple Rain, and of course, I was amazed by the stuff, the music, and all that. But the core thing that I gathered from that struck me was it seemed like there was this strong work ethic because they made a point to show like the rehearsing and that sort of stuff, and then going back, doing my studies of what you guys are doing. I know that there was a lot of rehearsing and practice, but I want to know what instilled that work ethic in you guys to do that. So like, in the sense that everything that you guys did was on such a high level, like where did you guys get that from?
Well, I'd have to say a couple of things. I mean, one thing, is Prince's dad was a very, very big influence. I can't say what kind of an influence he was on Prince. I can just assume that he was a big influence on Prince, but he was a huge influence on me because he would literally talk to us and preach to us and at the same time playing the piano. And he was like the most incredible. I mean, I'm talking about incredible. I mean, to this day, I think he's one of the most amazing piano players I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
I mean, this guy had so much power in his hands that, that he was able to transfer from his hands to those keys. I've never seen anything like that. To this day, it gives me chills when I even think about how unbelievable he was. But he used to just play and he would preach to us. And, I got to be pretty close with his dad because even, when me and Prince were going through our thing after I left and was doing my thing and he was doing his thing, his dad still lived in the neighborhood. So I would always go see his dad, and his dad would be, gardening and hanging out. And so I just go and I'd still get that little, that blast of, just inspiration.
Right.
Because he was very inspirational and very influential. But, a lot of the work ethic, was instilled by some of the things that he said. He's like, if you want to be the best, you got to play, you got to practice, and when other guys are, running around and out on the streets and blah, 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 and, getting these little girls pregnant and blah, 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 you guys need to be practicing. And I remembered all that stuff. And I really took all that stuff to heart, and so, literally, holidays would come by. I would make it a point, and I still do that to this day. Holidays would come by, and I would make it a point to practice on Christmas, to play on Christmas. And plus, we were always doing gigs anyway. And that's the other thing that had a lot to do with the work ethic is because we would play I don't remember, almost every single year for years. We would play every Christmas. We would play every New Year's Eve gig. Every holiday, every Easter gig, so there was never, that's where the work ethic came from. So when other people were out there, celebrating New Year's Eve and all that kind of stuff, we were actually playing New Year's Eve.
Okay.
So, I think all of that had a lot to do with the work ethic.
Wow. Yeah, that's something I always admired about your whole scene, just from the outside looking in from a lot of you dudes, man. It's like everybody was putting in work. Everyone seemed like they was just really into their craft, which, coming from so for me, I come from, sort of the hip hop world, and what you guys was doing, I was a little young, but I wanted to do that, but around me was hip hop. And so it was more so, you learn how to DJ or rap and that sort of thing. But I was like, you know what? I want to take the aesthetic of what these cats is doing, and we need to be practicing every day. We need to be working.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's something I always admired.
Well, I think if you look at it because everything is related, whether it's hip hop, whether it's music, instrument, playing an instrument. It's like if you look at it like this, if you think about the world or even your city or whatever, the country, there's a 1,000 people trying to do the same thing you're trying to do. So what's going to make you any different than them? How are you going to stand out amongst all of these people? Everybody thinks they look good, and so, you ain't looking any different than anybody else, so what's going to make you, what's going to distinguish you from all the other people doing this? And, to my way of thinking, the only thing that's going to make me any better than anybody else is if I play harder and I'm more convicted, and I practice all the time. So I literally, I'd have my little girlfriends next to me, and I'd be sitting in front of the TV watching Gilligan's Island with my guitar, practicing, and when I was going to see one of my girlfriends, I'd be on my bike, and people would see me in the neighborhood. I'd have my guitar on, riding my bike, no hands, playing, on my way to see, whatever, but that was it. I mean, always. I'm always playing, always practicing, always trying to get better. And it's like, because I don't like making mistakes. I don't like to mess up. If I'm on stage and I'm playing, I don't ever like to make mistakes. So it's like I don't want anybody saying, and I was cocky. I was like, there's nobody. And that's the other thing is, being able to say that you're better than somebody else and then backing it up. Because I literally would go on stage when other bands were there, and I said, you ain't shit. They said, what? That's right. You ain't shit. And I'll stomp a hole in give me that guitar. Come on, let us play.
Yeah.
And people would be like, you hear him? Oh, come on. Then they'd say, come on up here. Let me see what you got. Man, and we go up there, and then it was over. Because then we go up there and we get the gig. And so, I mean, that's just that's how it was. That's how I was. That's how it was. That's how we got to be, playing a lot of the gigs that we got to play. I mean, and there was a couple of bands that I said that to where we didn't go up there and we did, because, there was a group called The Family, the original Family. Which was Joe Lewis and, and Randy Barber and Sonny Thompson and those guys, man, they were like Pierre. Oh, man. They had a horn section. Them brothers was like, I mean, I didn't even talk stuff to them. In fact, I used to just watch them, especially Joe, because Joe was the coldest drummer ever. He had first of all, he had the coolest fro on the north side. He had the coolest fro. And so when he played, he just looked like the coolest brother on the planet. I just was like, I want to be like him. Right. And I didn't even play the drums at the time. I was like, but he had this rock, man, just the way he would play. And I just wanted to play. I wanted to be in that band, And that's why,
No, go ahead.
When Morris because Morris had a fro kind of like that. I was like, you know what? You kind of got a fro like Joe Lewis.
I heard Sonny was raw too, though.
Oh, man, are you kidding? Sonny was like Jimi Hendrix. He played bass and guitar. And he'd flip the bass around, and man, that brother was like those guys. And then Michael Lewis, Joe's brother. I mean, all of those, Randy Barber, those guys were they were on another level, and they were kind of the bar. They were my bar. Okay. Because I thought, you know what, we ain't no good until we're better than them. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of bands like that just were on another level, and it was cool to be able to go see them play. Because, you couldn't go see the Ohio Players play. You couldn't go see Earth, Wind & Fire. Well, you could, but you couldn't go see them play every week. I could go down to the community center, and, wiggle my way some kind of way in. And, because back then, it was like this. It was, it was really a cool, time to be growing up, especially in my neighborhood. I mean, there was a lot of craziness, and I was involved in a lot of the craziness on another street level kind of thing. But on the music level, and the combination was really, maybe that's what it was, because, I used to go to house parties and bootlegs. Okay. So, there's a lot of things that really were kind of intertwined in the music thing. And, but it just made for a really, really, great, little childhood.
So now, I know you guys are in Minneapolis, and you talk about the projects, and a joke about Minneapolis, like how I live in Seattle, so it's joke. Are there black people in Seattle? Like, what was sort of the racial mix where you live? Like you said, you were in the hood, basically. Like, what area was this?
Yeah, the projects is North Minneapolis. Okay. It's like, they call it bedrock, but it was like just, housing projects where they're all connected, and, everybody that's poor lived in the project. Mm. And so the racial mix was everything, and one of the cool things about living in the projects is, nobody could try to pull that "I'm better than you" thing, because obviously, I don't know if you guys did cat fights, but, cat fights was a big deal back then. Cat fights was like just, I guess they call it playing the mama card or
Oh,
whatever.
ranking. We call it ranking. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
Ranking. Okay, yeah, there you go. We call it cap fights.
Okay.
And so we would basically have, so it's like anybody would try to talk stuff and act like they was like better than anybody else. Well, if you so better than everybody, why you living in the project?
Right.
So, so you really couldn't pull that. But, when I think about it now, because obviously, I'm older and I think I'm a lot more politically minded, because I realize that, politics are in so many things, that happen and that exist now, that it's you'd be naive to not think that somehow politics weren't involved in the project. And so, and if you think about it, at that period of time, because it was like the '60s, the early '60s, we were, Martin Luther King, we were living in the projects when Martin Luther King got shot. So,
Wow.
so we were dealing with, just kind of getting over the civil rights thing. So it was a very interesting time, and I think that the project was a training ground to see what it was like. I think it was a government experiment to see what it was like for different cultures to actually coexist, because we had Indians, we had Hispanics, we had blacks, we had whites. They had interracial couples.
Mm-hmm.
They had the kids that were adopted. They had every kind of, configuration you could think of lives in the projects, And so, and it was interesting because, and then they had these different programs where they would bring, guys would come down and they would try to give you or sell you or get you to sign up for these different programs. One thing was called a Raleigh Man, who was this guy who came with all this weird, strange food, that was really cheap. It was like strange syrup and strange cough medicine and all this weird stuff that, now that I'm older, I'm like, it's like, this is some straight experimental stuff.
Right. Wow.
Because, literally, we're coming from, from straight, just barely out of slavery, into civil rights and the whole civil rights struggle. And so that's an interesting time. And then, obviously you're getting past all of that and getting to the fact, to where, actually we everybody fought and got the right to vote and equal and, and everything broke free. And then it was like, oh, we did it. We made it. We're free now. And that's when, everybody's wearing dashikis. Everybody had a fro.
Right.
All the music was representing freedom. And, people like Curtis Mayfield were making you feel proud. And people like, James Brown were saying, hey, yeah, I'm black and I'm proud.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Curtis Mayfield was talking about beautiful black women and all kinds of other stuff. And so you had, you started realizing that Bob Marley was on the other side of the world talking about his thing. And you had, some of the other South African, apartheid things going on. There was just so much stuff happening at that time. And it was all sort of trickling down, to the projects, and it made me, as a young artist and, a wannabe young artist, taking it all in. Because I remember, everybody thought I was crazy when I thought that the Beatles song was a civil rights song. And they thought, man, that ain't no. I remember arguing with my sister, man, because I was saying Strawberry Fields that's a civil rights song. And she said, it is not. Strawberry Fields Forever. I said, yeah, Strawberry Fields Forever. Nothing to get hung about. Nobody's in my tree. Nobody else must be high or low. I was like, all that stuff is like, it's metaphors for, people trying to say, look, just live together. Everything could be beautiful. You don't have to, there's nothing to get hung over. There's nothing, you shouldn't be hanging people over this kind of stuff. But, we would go round and round, and she thought I was crazy. And I was like, but that would be a question that if John Lennon was still around, I'd love to ask, like, what's that song? Because he could answer that question because he wrote it.
Wow. So I want to jump ahead to, because it's an important question I want to ask. So the first Prince album's done. It comes out. I know you guys, you did a couple of shows, the early performances. But I want to know, when's the point and I don't know if this may have went into Dirty Mind, but was there a certain point where you and Prince looked at each other and was like, based off of everything you just came from where you grew up, you was like, you know what, my man, we made it. Like we paid. What did it feel like when you got a nice check or something where you was like, we actually doing this? Like and people know who we is. And like when you come off the stage, I know you said you was a hustler. So I know like when you did them shows and them females is coming, like I know was there a point you was like, oh, okay, damn, we doing this.
Yeah.
And I want to know too, real quick, who was the pimp of the group? Like who had game about themselves in the group? Who was the real?
Who had what?
Who had more game about themselves?
Like I said, I was a hustler, right? So, but it was really, I mean, because if you think about the makeup of the group in Prince's group, I was rooming with Dez.
Okay.
So and we used to clash because I was trying to and look, here's the thing. The thing is, we're on tour and we're opening for Rick James.
Yes.
Originally, we were supposed to open for Kool and the Gang.
Oh, okay.
But we were at this. It's funny because that's when we met Sheila E. Because we were at the Circle Star Theater, and I remember we were opening for Kool and the Gang, and I mean we were completely killing it. I mean it wasn't a big place, but I remember it was the whole Bubble Yum thing because Prince was in the Bubble Yum, and girls were liking that whole thing, but I remember, Kool and the Gang, the Circle Star Theater is situated so that one band is on one side and the other band is on the other side, and so the stage actually spins around in a circle. So when we ended the set, I remember I think Desi either kicked his amp or something, but it fell on top of Kool and the Gang's keyboard setup and crushed it or something like that, and they were mad about that. That was the first thing, but then it got even worse because then when they were on performing, we were supposed to, I guess they wanted us to stay, out of sight. But we came out because we were like, yeah, man, this girl's out here. We're in San Francisco, man. So we went out into the crowd, and they started going crazy. They started coming, wanting us to sign stuff. And so they're trying to play, whatever the song was at the time. And we're out there, and girls are asking us, and before you know it, there's this commotion going on, and they're trying to perform it. All these girls are over there crowding around us, and and they're going, and so they kicked us off the tour. So, and that was, we only did one show. So,
wow.
But I remember one of the cool things I remember somebody introducing us to Sheila E. I remember thinking, obviously at the time she still is, she was
Bad.
fine.
Yeah.
I was like, woo. But so, and then we wound up going on tour with Rick James. And that was an unbelievable tour. And that's when I realized, we had made it because, I remember, the first, we were doing these big giant arenas. They were like 10,000 seat, arenas, which was big. That was the biggest things, the biggest shows we were doing at the time. And I remember, people would hate us. I mean, the first 3 songs, people were like booing and calling us all kind of names and, get out of here. What kind of clothes are you wearing? And I had on clear pants. And, I think
I want to sidebar that one for later. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so we were getting a whole lot of ridicule for about the first 3 songs, and then after about the 4th song, people were like going, "Wait a second, these dudes is good," And so after that, it was like, by about the 4th or 5th song, those boos turned into complete cheers. And then when I realized we made it, I think we were in Denver, and this is when I realized, okay, I think we actually are we're actually doing something, because we had this really janky dressing room that was in a little motor. It was in some little motor home that wasn't even in the venue. Like Rick James and their whole hookup was in the venue, and they had a nice dressing room, and ours was off in some little mobile home off to the side somewhere. But I remember after we went off and we went, we finished playing, we went to our dressing room, and all of a sudden we heard all this noise around our dressing room. We looked out the window and it was surrounded with people, with girls and people, and we were like, oh shit, how are we gonna get out of here? And before we knew it, the whole thing was being pushed and shoved, and it was rocking.
Wow.
And it was like, it was completely surrounded. We couldn't get out. And so they were like, we got to get you guys out of here. And I remember they tried to figure out how to get us out of there and got us into a limousine. But, I mean, the crowd had literally, they just came and just, I don't, because we were before Rick James, so I don't know who was still in the arena. I just know that, it seemed like the whole arena had come out,
Wow.
and just surrounded our dressing room. And so they got us into a limousine, and we started driving around. I remember somebody got hit by the limousine because that became a problem later. But, we were trying to get away from these people. We finally drove off, and we got away from the arena. And literally, it was like 4 cars were following us.
Damn.
And so we went, and we were trying to lose these cars. And I remember one of them was a Volkswagen. And, I remember our road manager said, I'm going to get out. I'm going to get him we're going to lose him. Well, no, first we tried to stop at some hotel and act like this was the hotel we were in. And so we went into the hotel, and they said, just walk to the other end of the hotel and go out the other door, and we'll meet you at the other side. And so a couple of us walked out and tried to see if we could, fool him. And we might have lost a car, but we still had about 3 cars following us. And so finally the road manager got out, and he jumped on this Volkswagen and tried to do that whole, you leave us, you let us, and stop following us. Man, they took off with him hanging outside the window. And we were like, oh, no. And they started flying. And then the next thing I know, he got flung.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh, yeah, he got jacked up. So we had to go collect him and put him in the car and, take him to, to emergency. But that's when I realized this is it. This is what big time is all about, I guess.
Wow. We had Dez on the show a while ago. What that Rick James tour? I mean, was there? We hear of there like some tensions and different things, but from your side of it, did you see any of that? Whether it was from Rick or his camp, or was there any kind of thing going back and forth?
Yeah, because they thought. I mean, and they blamed me because everybody always blamed me for the trouble, right? Because they said that I had an attitude. Because they said that, when I came off stage, I had some cocky attitude, and I did, because I was. I'm not, it is what it is. I never if they would have asked me if I was cocky, I'd have said, yeah, I'm cocky. If they would have came to me and said, well, what are you cocky about? I would have gave them a long list and a description. Because, it was what it was. I mean, I was like, when I went on stage to try to rip anybody else's head off. It's like, I don't want anybody being able to come on stage and think that they're going to outdo what we did. Because that's the whole game, right?
Right.
You don't want to go on there. It's not, this is like, if you're in the big time, you're trying to make a name for yourself. Mm-hmm. So they said I used to come off stage and I wouldn't speak and, and I was looked all mean and they were right. I did. I didn't want to speak. I was sweating and coming off. We just got through throwing down, man, doing, diving and jumping and popping back up and doing all that thing and waving, I had all kinds of, scarves on my guitar. So I was waving them around and doing my whole thing and, jumping up backwards on the drum riser and just having fun, spinning around and, just doing whatever. I mean, it was just fun.
Right.
And it's rock and roll, I mean, it's what it's all about. And so you don't come off stage, hi guys, how you doing? Yeah, you guys go on and not try to rip us a new one. No, hell no, man. I'm like, now try to follow that shit up.
Yeah, y'all was
like,
yeah.
And so they didn't like that. So that was tension. So, and then one of the main problems was that, we played Rick's, his hometown, Buffalo, New York. And then I remember drawing, it was like a skit on this. There used to be a TV show. It's kind of like Saturday Night Live, but it was called Friday. And they did this. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They did a skit. They did a skit called some sort of Howdy Doody skit or something like that. And I remember I thought it was hilarious because they had Mr. Bill and all that other kind of stuff. So I drew a big sketch of Howdy Doody on the chalkboard. It was just, with the freckles and the funny hair and looked like George Bush. So, but I drew it and, that was it, right? And then, we left and we went to go out and mingle and all that. But I guess Rick, because it was his hometown, his mom was there, and I think he had the mayor that was going to come backstage, and they were going to have this big party because it was a hometown celebration. So they asked us if we were done in our dressing room. We were like, yeah. And so they went and took over the dressing room. But what I didn't know is that one of the roadies had went back, and on my sketch, drew some braids on it and sprayed a whole bunch of cologne because I guess Rick wore a whole lot of cologne or something. So they sprayed a whole lot of cologne and then wrote Rick James on it. And then, so when his mom and all those guys and the dignitaries came in and they saw that on the chalkboard and they were like, so they were like, wow. Somebody made fun of Rick James in front of his mom and, all this other kind of stuff. And again, then they blamed me. Right? So it's like, well,
that damn Andre.
Yeah. I was like, and I was just right. I said, look, unless you think Rick James looks like Howdy Doody, then I didn't, because I said, I drew Howdy Doody. I said, and if somebody did something beyond, I said, it had braids. I said, I didn't put no braids on it. I said, I don't know who did that, and so we went round and round, and his brother got all up in the chest, like he was gonna like. I was like, dude, look, it ain't even like that, it ain't. So then they were like, you can't come to now. I remember I came down there at this party, and I came down with a couple of girls and was trying to, get into the party. You can't come in. I'm like, why? What do you mean? Why can't I come in? It's like, yeah, you ain't invited. You can't come into any more of our parties because you drew a picture of Rick that looked like Howdy Doody. I'm like, oh God, please, And so it just got to be, and then we finally had to all get together in a room and talk it out. And that's when I found out that they thought I was mad and had an attitude and blah, 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 blah. But that was the tension thing.
Okay. Did you ever talk to Rick or see Rick after that point, any later years or anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's funny because I saw him and Tina not long before he passed away because they were living, I think, in Pasadena or somewhere. And I used to hang out in Pasadena. And it's funny because, they didn't recognize me, because, nobody ever, even still, people just don't they expect me, I guess, to, look old or whatever and dated or whatever. And I'm always changing my vibe, and I'm always just, I'm just a person of the world. I'm still a student of everything. I'm still learning from stuff. I still love fashion. I still love music. I still keep my head to the ground. And so it's funny because they were sitting outside eating at the sushi restaurant. And I was with, a girl that I was dating at the time. And I was like, oh my God, there's Rick James and Tina Marie. And I was like, she said, oh, you know them? I said, yeah. I said, I was on tour with both of them. I said, watch this. And so, because I love to clown around, especially people, and so they were sitting there and there was an open chair, right? And so I snuck up and I went and sat in the chair. I said, what's up, y'all? And they were looking, and Rick, Rick always, he leans back and he looks at you with that look, right? And then Tina was like, Andre? And Rick was like, Cymone. I said, yeah. Oh, man, I didn't know who that was. And then we wound up sitting there talking, and we got caught up, and then, because I hadn't seen him for a while, and then Tina I hadn't seen, we were all really tight. We got to be really good friends. We hung out in Minneapolis one time, but he did a show. So, yeah, that was a really cool brother. We got off on a bad foot because the first show we did, he pointed a gun at me, but not a real gun, I guess the love gun or whatever it was that he had. Okay. He pointed that thing at me, and like I said, I come from a place where you point something, you point a gun,
you better pull the trigger.
You better use it because I'm coming back,
Sure.
And so, and I really didn't, the idea of pointing a gun at me, I'm just not one of those kind of people that you do stuff like that with,
Wow.
So, and I let him know, and I think he thought, it's one of those kind of things where I'm one of those kind of brothers where, you could play me like that. It's just I'm not one of those kind of people. It's like, you don't point shit at me. I don't care who you are, and I completely, because he was, I guess he was some big superstar, and none of that stuff means nothing to me.
Right.
You're just people. To me, people are people. I don't care if you do music and you're successful. Hey, more power to you. Yeah, but that don't make you any better than anybody else.
Right. You're still a man, just another man.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And you just happen to do music, and good for you. Just if I go down to the Ford plant, and I meet a brother there because I got families there. It's like, look, man, we just people. We just boys, and we hanging. That's why I go back even now, man. I hang with friends, and always did go back and hang with friends of mine that I grew up with, and, and we just kick it. So, I don't all that kind of stuff, and somebody pointing a gun at me like I'm supposed to somehow think that's funny. It just completely, I completely lost it. In fact, Prince was like, chill, Andres, it's cool. I'm like, no, it ain't cool. But anyway, it wound up being, we ended up being cool. So.
Okay. Are you good for time, man? Because I don't want to.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. Yeah. So Dirty Mind, inching into the time. Now, let me put this out up front. I'm a Prince fan, but I like the time stuff, and I know that's Prince and all that. But to me, like that music, I still bump that today. Like I sit in the car, get it up, all them cuts, I blast that. That's my joints. Now, the Time Project, was this sort of a thing that all of y'all was working on, or were you doing like the girls, or where does it sort of fall? What was going on? You have a hand in some of that?
It's interesting because, there's only so much. I can only give you my perspective.
For sure.
Everybody has a perspective, and that's probably a good thing. But from my little perspective, I know that my last gig with Prince's band was in France, and that's where I left my trench coat and called it a day. But the one thing that came from France was when I was in France, I saw I don't know who it was, but there was some French dude. I thought he was French. Turns out that he might be a British dude. And I think I know who he is, and we're friends now. But as a dude, this dude was so cool. He had this zoot suit on, and he had a couple of girls surrounding him, and he was playing this funky music. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I'm a dude, because my sister is a seamstress. She's the one who made, all the time suits and Prince's trench coats and all of our, even the Grand Central suits and all that other. She even made the Vanity Six camisoles and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
What's your sister's name?
Sister, Sylvia.
Okay.
Yep. And so I'm like, I already had it all in my mind, but my problem was that I told Prince, and so, and he had a record deal, and Morris, who at the time was he was still our friend. He wasn't he had just been hanging around, was kind of like, doing different things and running and doing errands and stuff like that at the time. He wasn't, but he wanted to get, and I'm not sure quite what kind of a deal. I mean, again, I'm a little older now and a little wiser, and there's some things that I know now that I didn't know then, that, might make things make a little bit more sense. But anyway, Morris wanted to do something, and, I know that we always wanted to do something for Morris, and I know Prince and Morris were still close. And so they were talking about putting together a group, and putting together a group, with Morris. And, I think originally it was with Morris just being in the group because, and so they thought, well, we'll audition some people. And I remember they auditioned Alexander O'Neill. He was going to originally be the lead singer. And, he had something where he had to do push-ups before he did any performing. And so that became, an issue because we were in there auditioning, and he's like, I got to do my push-ups first. And we were like, and you got to do this before every gig? Before you do anything? Yeah, I got to do my push-ups.
Is that why that brother be sweating so hard?
Well, when you finish those push-ups, we'll see you next time.
Wow.
So yeah, but yeah, and so so he didn't wind up being the lead singer. So and then Morris, in Grand Central, he would only come from behind the drums and sing "Love Won't Let Me Wait," and so I would have never seen that one. So that was something that Prince and Morris, they had more foresight than I did because I never saw that. But, that's just my involvement, the little bit of perspective that I have on that. And the rest they did. I know as far as the music was concerned, I think some of that stuff came out of jam sessions because we used to jam a lot, because, I have some of those jam sessions where I'm playing and a lot of the stuff is not exactly the same, but very similar. And, again, like I said, we're all doing this. That's why I'm not trying to take any credit for anything because it's not like Prince couldn't have wrote that stuff without me, or it's not like I can't write stuff without him, or vice versa, and on and on and on. But I have this stuff, I have, the Do Me Babies, the original versions. I have the Let's Work, when it used to be called Let's Rock. And, all that other kind of stuff. So, I mean, and it's me playing on them, but eventually they become me not playing on them. There's the same thing. It's just that instead of me actually playing on them, it says somebody else is playing on them, but it's the same stuff. And so, I mean, that's where it got a little bit weird, because it's like, it'd be like if I had a jam session with my band, and my band came up with, we're just jamming and came up with these sort of parts, and then I came and said, oh, great parts. I'll play them all. And then I'll say, I played them all. Something about that don't seem quite right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fine because we're boys, and that's what, and you're like, hey, I want to, that's part of my thing is to be able to say, for the people, that's part of my, my presentation, my marketing thing. And, I understand that.
Right.
You got to do what you got to do. You got to, like I said, like I always say, if you can make some money, do what you got to do to make that money, But it does get a little bit weird, and I can see how people could look at that and say that's not really right,
Was it
because
Go ahead.
if you're jamming and you come up with this like dope bass part, like, and you're jamming on it, but then when it actually goes to be recorded for the record and the bass part is still, and then you're going, and everything around it is different, but that's still sort of the essence. Or whether it's, some other bass pattern that's, a very indicative bass pattern, but you're just not playing it anymore. Somebody else is. I just don't know how that's an interesting, only somebody that's close to you can do that.
Right.
And then, kind of not really be called to task on it, because you got to be really close to somebody to say, hey, okay, all right, well, because I wouldn't normally do that. Like if that normally happened, they obviously we'd have a problem. So, but when it's your boy and you're close, it's different. So
when does it?
I think there was some of that went on.
When does it become? It sounds like there's a part of, like you said, there's certain things you do for family or for your partners, but at the end of the day, too, you guys are in a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And does it get to a point where it's like, was it becoming more business? And it's sort of the blurred lines of, hey man, actually, yeah, I did get down on that. But when things start to come out, names aren't on things like, and again, this no shade for nobody,
right?
A lot older at this point. Just saying, looking back at it, I mean, how was it sort of like? Was it becoming too much of a business, or I don't know, people were not able to communicate or something? I'm just curious, and this is a lesson learned for any other cats coming up or doing stuff where it's like, do you have to be very concretely like, hey, okay, you did this, you did that, make sure everybody's straight? Or you sound like you coming from a situation, correct me if I'm wrong, where we were so cool where you just didn't even think that you even had to say nothing about that. It was like, you wouldn't even expect my man. That's my man. Like, I ain't got to worry.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. And it was a thing about, I know for me, it just got to be, it got to a point where I really, I mean, I was a hustler, I was used to making a little bit of money, even if it was, illegitimate, and I just got to the point where I'm doing this music thing and I ain't really making no money, but, somebody else has a house with with like this dope shower and this dope tub and, and all this dope car and, and I'm like still at my mom's crib.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and I know I'm all involved in everything. And it's like, well, and I'm starting to ask those questions.
Like, we ain't eating over here. Well, I'm not eating.
I can't even, I'm like, I can't even really take my girl to the movies now. Right. And it's like, I mean, this ain't making no sense. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it started becoming a thing where I thought, you know what, I love this brother, but you know what, I got to start doing some stuff where I can actually make some money.
For sure.
Because, I mean, it's nothing against, it's just, it's just all about survival now, and it's like, I'm not mad at anybody. I understand it. It's business. It's like, hey, this is how he was handling his thing. and and I felt like I was on some different end of the spectrum because other people were, that were involved were making money and getting money and, and getting credit. And I felt like, I felt a little bit, on the outside of that. So I thought, you know what, let me just go try to do my own thing, because, I'm obviously, if this is how it is, then I understand it. And because I got into this thing, I was a big boy. I got into it. It's his thing. It's like, hey, you know what? This is your thing. I'm going to go on ahead and start trying to do my thing because I can't, in this situation, I can't really live the kind of life I want to live. I've always had aspirations and goals about doing things. And I never thought I was going to be in somebody's band where I have to wait for somebody to kick me down. That's just not the kind of person that I am. It's just not my personality. So it's like, hey, you know what? I wish you all the best. I love you, brother. I'm gonna make this move. And so that was it.
Okay. I respect that. Now, knowing that you guys was close and like I know your mom, like I said, I'm curious, like how did your family, because they see the success, like, man, they doing their thing, it's growing, and then these two brothers going separate, like how did that take it? And again, you answer how you want to, but in terms of like, the family and stuff, was it kind of like, oh, you know what, we gonna rock with you over here, Andre, do your thing, or was they trying to like, can y'all patch it up, or you know what I mean? Like, cause it was deeper than just music, right?
Yeah, it's funny. You're right. My mom was because I actually left, before we did Saturday Night Live.
Oh, okay.
And then there was some stuff that went on that was really crazy, but I was like, you know what? And that's when I said, I'm gonna make a move because this obviously, is not the situation, that's going to be best for me as an artist and as an individual, and so like I said, no hard feelings, because I wasn't mad. In fact, I was actually, it was like a brand new kind of day. It's like, wow, I'm going to go do my thing. So I was excited. Now, as far as my family is concerned, different people, and again, everybody has their perspective, and it's hard for me to speak for other people. I can only speak for myself. And I know that some of my family members, felt a little bit, on the outside of, the success that, they felt a part of, because obviously we were all supporting, each other, and our families were very supportive of all of us. When we were Grand Central, our family was always right there. When we were doing a gig, our families were always right there.
Okay.
No matter how small or big, when we did our first show at the Capri, families were right there. So, everybody felt very, my mom was probably the first big Andre or Prince fan ever.
Okay.
So it's kind of, it's a little interesting, on that level for things to sort of, to see things take off and, and for people to feel like they weren't, sort of a part of that anymore. But, that's, it's I really don't know. I think him and my mom were still pretty close, although, there was a lot of things that used to be, that seemed like it was pretty interesting. But, my mom was just she was a big supporter of his and a big supporter of mine and a big supporter of all of ours. She was just like, she was just that mom that you'd want to have there, kind of always trying to keep us together. She was, even, me and Jody's thing, it was the same thing, when we were doing our thing and, even when we started, like, when we split up, she was still trying to get us to do music together. It's like, it's just how my mom is. It's like, and even when I would come home, I would come home and all my boys would be there, Charles, William. She'd call everybody and say, Andre's coming in town. You guys, when he comes in town, he loves to play basketball. So they'd be like, she'd have all my friends there, and then, she'd have a whole basketball set up, and we'd play some knockdown. Some of our best games were like, I didn't even know. I'd come home and, it'd all be set up, and I'd either come out of the limo or wherever I was coming, like, oh, where's my tennis shoes? And my mom said, they're right here, and she'd already have them set up for me.
Wow.
And she, and it was like that. So I just put them on, and we like, okay, all right, 21, 1-on-1, 3-on-3, whatever. So yeah, so it was like that. It was fun.
It sounded like your mom really held you down, man. Like she sounded like she was that lady There's a lot of moms like that in a lot of neighborhoods that really just sort of held down an area and everybody respected and showed a lot of love. So I can respect that. I understand that.
She really did. In fact, she was probably, again, even when she passed away or when she was sick, that's pretty much what brought me and Prince kind of back together, and we kind of reconnected our bond. It was because she passed away in 2003.
Okay.
And before that, he and I hadn't talked for years. Like we hadn't talked for a long time, and I remember I had been with her at the hospital because I just was staying there. I was literally living at the hospital for a while she was there, and I remember she had gotten better. Mm-hmm. And so she was having a little bit of a party because there was always a lot of people there, because my mom was really popular. And so she sent me to go get some pizzas. And so I went and got a bunch of pizzas, probably about 10 pizzas or something like that. And I went, I was on my way back. And as I'm walking in, who do I see getting on the elevator at the same time but Prince, I think it was his wife at the time, Larry Graham and his wife.
Okay.
And I looked and I'm like, you better grab some of these pizzas. So we walk into the hospital room, and my mom, man, the look on her face was priceless.
Wow.
And she was like, so from then on, she was cracking jokes. She was in complete rare form, and and it was a really, really beautiful, and it made me realize, whatever kind of thing we had, it's not that big a deal. We need to get past it because we really are like brothers. Mm-hmm. And so that's, again, my mom bringing us together.
Wow, man. That's where y'all worked it out right there. Like you said, life is too short. And that's what moms do, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, cut all that foolishness out. Y'all supposed to be bigger than this. Let the world get in front of to the bond. So that's deep, man. I didn't really know that. I never heard about that. Well, obviously I never would have known, but
well, it actually got deeper than that because the unfortunate thing was obviously the hospital because like I said, she got better. They were talking about letting her go the next day or in a couple of days that she'd be able to come back home. But obviously Prince is he's a superstar. Mm-hmm. And so when he came to the hospital and the staff was like, that's Prince. So they moved my mom overnight, which they weren't supposed to do. And when they moved her, she took a turn for the worse.
Oh, man.
And then they called me and I had to come down to intensive care and the next day she passed away. Oh. So yeah, it's but obviously, it's nobody's fault. It's not like it's anybody's fault or anything like that. It's, the hospital was supposed to let me know if they were going to move her. They didn't, and so anyway, they were going to move her to a bigger room because, she'd, I guess there was a lot of people and all that kind of stuff. So,
right.
Yeah.
Damn, I get it. All right. All right. So, your first album, you left the Prince situation. You started your own. Now, did you hook up with was it the cat named Owen? Did he become your manager, or was it Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I literally, because I did the last part of Prince's tour for free, so I didn't make any money. So I was like straight broke. So I was like, my brother had invested in some recording in a little 4-track. And so I was able to, kind of record some stuff on 4-track and do that whole thing. And so I thought, I could just call Columbia and say, listen, why don't you guys give me a record deal? And so I did. I called them up. I said, listen, you guys should give me a record deal. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm Andre Cymone. You should just give me a record deal. And they were like, well, it don't work like that. You got to send us a demo and, you got to have a manager and blah, 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 blah. And at the time, Prince and Owen had fallen out. So I called Owen and said, listen, man, I think I can get a deal at Columbia. And I called him up and they said, just send me a demo. So he's like, well, you got to do it right. So he had me take some pictures, and we cut some songs actually in the studio, and then he got me a deal.
Okay. That album, man, I remember. To me, your first album is like when I was, God, I don't know what, I must have been in like middle school or starting high school, but it was like the older cats from my neighborhood. That was the joint. I would always see that cover, that album, and I was like, what is that? And where I lived, we didn't really have much awareness of Prince at that time, but I remember always seeing that cover, and I always remember here on the radio, I don't know how the album did personally, but around here they were bumping "Get It Girl," like that was one of the cuts, right? And I always remember, I remember that hearing that as when I was younger, and then when I knew who you were and I started learning about it, I was like, oh, that was that dude. Okay, I was like, yeah, they've been bumping them songs, so it was interesting to me, like you was really hitting in the neighborhoods, at least out here. And even when I went to Houston, I remember hearing you guys' stuff pretty heavy. But so that album had a lot of cuts. I mean, of course, Kelly's Eyes was a big song, I'm sure. How did that album do for you? I mean, did you get to tour on that?
I did. I did a small tour. It didn't make a whole lot of noise. I mean, the thing is, if I'd have understood, if I knew, I guess, how does it go? If I knew then what I know now,
right.
I would have done things a whole lot different. But I think what happened was, I thought, my attitude was, I want to do something that nobody else is doing, period. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to do something completely different instead of, like even now, it's the same thing, with this album, with the Stone. It's like, I look at it like this. You're given a gift. Yeah, you could, if it's about money, then you do things to make money. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's about the art, and it's about trying to do something different and trying to raise the stakes of the game and do something a little bit different. And so, with that album, I just thought, well, let me do something new, because what I was originally going to do, which I told you was kind of like what ended up being like the time, because I had songs already that were funky and all that other kind of stuff, and I had my whole vibe set, and then the time came out and kind of beat me to that whole thing. So I thought, okay, I had to regroup. So I thought, well, let me do something totally different. And I was into Devo and craft work, and I thought, I'm gonna be Black Devo. That's what I'm gonna do. And so I thought, let's just do that, And so because I was already into like really, I was one of the first in the country, one of the first three in the country to have this thing called the PPG, which was, the first sort of sequencer, all the stuff that people it's now like Logic and Pro Tools.
Right.
But back then it was me, Stevie Wonder, and Thomas Dolby were the only ones that had it in this country.
Wow.
So I was into this I was trying to create, music of the future. I thought, I'm going to just try to see how far I can take this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to create, vocoders and, all kinds of different kinds of sounds and, really getting into it like that. The only problem is that I was signed to the R&B department at Columbia, which is basically the black department, and they weren't feeling the experiment. They just wanted me to do the same thing. They wanted me to be, to do the same thing Prince was doing, and to make that same kind of music. And I was like, I'm trying to be an artist. I'm trying to be individual, and I got away from that to try to do something different. And so, and I remember them cutting out, the top 10, saying, why don't you just do something like the top 10 R&B songs, write something. Because, Larkin, who was my guy, he knew I could do all that stuff because he heard, stuff that I had cut. Mm-hmm. He came to Minneapolis and he heard all kinds of stuff that I did. So he's like, why don't you just do something like that? I was like, because I don't want to. I want to do stuff like this. Why don't you guys promote this? And so we would go round and round because, again, I wasn't into it. I wasn't doing music just to make money. I considered myself an artist then. I consider myself an artist now. It's like, you know what? I'm just trying to, just be an artist. I want to be able to, be successful, doing something different, not doing what everybody else is doing. That's just not my thing. I have the ability to do something, unique. I want to do that. I just need somebody to market it. And we went we bumped heads and on and on. And finally I just said, you know what, if you guys can't promote it, I'm not going to make any more music. And I said, and I tried to get them to let me go. In fact, I went into the office and said, why don't you guys just drop me? And they wouldn't do it. So that's when I started producing, because they wouldn't let me off the label. So I just thought, you know what, I won't do it. I mean, if I'd have thought about it, I would have wrote "Slave" on my cheek. But I thought, rather than write "Slave" on my cheek, I just said, I'm just not even going to do it. And so you're not going to pimp me. So
Wow.
If I can't do what I want to do, then you're not going to get anything. And I'm go make money for somebody else, which is what I did. I went and made money for RCA, for Columbia, and for a whole lot of other different people.
All right, one other track I wanted to ask you about.
MCA.
I'm sorry, MCA. On your last album, I guess you did I think it was on Columbia. It was the AC album. Was that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you had the song "Dance Electric." So apparently, at some point in there, you and Prince had to have some sort of conversation. It was like, "Yo, let me do this song," or "I got this song." Now I remember watching. I believe it was a Prince interview he did. It was on TV. Like, I think when he was doing Under the Cherry Moon or something. And I swear he was talking about this song in terms of when he gave it to you or how you guys came together to talk about it. And he's kind of, it was a funny sort of way he was doing it, talking kind of a little slick talk in there, but I don't know. But then I've heard you say that, I don't know, there was a different way of how you guys came together. But I'm curious, what brought you guys together after you went your separate ways? How did it come back to where you can do this song?
Yeah, I really didn't appreciate that. Yeah, because it was,
you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Because that was a problem for me. Because I mean, I thought it was really cool originally. I thought, you know what? Because he was hot and he was doing this thing, and originally I didn't want to do it, because, I mean, it wasn't like I was looking for somebody to throw me some sort of a lifeline or anything like that. I was doing my thing, and I wasn't doing it trying to get some, hit or anything like that. I was trying to do it on my own terms, and so when he came and said, are you interested in doing this song? I got this song. It's perfect for you, and that's how it was originally presented.
Okay.
And I thought, that's really cool. I thought, you know what? That's cool, And so that's how it was in the spirit of when I first, thought that it was a great idea, or when I finally said it, because obviously the record company loved the idea. And,
right.
But then when I saw that whole thing that you're talking about, I was like, okay, now see, this is why, because then it was like, yeah, I told Andre to come get this hit. He knows he needs this hit. And it was like, all of a sudden, then it ain't so cool anymore, because it ain't like, we're boys and he's just, because I would never do that. But anyway, I mean, so then it gets into that whole, childish thing for me, at least from my standpoint, being childish. I guess I probably should have just let that roll off my back. But as you probably come to understand, I'm not that kind of person. I'm a very serious individual. And I don't take kindly to anybody cracking jokes about any aspect of anything that I'm trying to do, because I take what I do serious. So that became a problem. But again, I mean, in retrospect, now that I'm older and wiser, I think it's still cool, because I think he had all the best intentions, and I think, it was just probably caught up in the moment or whatever. And, you never know, because, even now people, when I do interviews, some people flip the interviews around and make it sound like I'm angry or bitter, and I'm far from any of that. And I've never been bitter and angry about any of that stuff. I mean, that I took a little bit personal because, not very many people probably wouldn't take that personal, because it's really, it's an interesting thing to have somebody sort of cracking a joke on nationwide television at your expense.
Right.
Just not something that I really, would expect from somebody that, I consider my brother. But that was that, and that was then, and, and we all get past that kind of stuff, and I got past it.
Okay.
Andre, this is Sean. I want to ask you about the hit and run era. You did, what, three shows during that time in '86?
What's hit and run?
The tour he did in '86, the parade tour. Did you participate in some of those shows? Did you do the Dance Electric?
Oh, you know what? I think I came up and sat in on a couple of shows, but I wasn't on the tour. It just so happened that I was in town.
Okay.
And yeah, it just so happened I was in town, and he was like, "You want to come up?" And I was like, "Yeah." And sure. Yeah.
So
it wasn't a planned thing. It wasn't an organized thing. It was just a random, very random thing that just so happened. Because I remember it was like, I want to say San Francisco or somewhere weird like that. I just happened to be, in town and said, "Hey, I'm going to come down to the show," or something like that. And went down to the show, and he said, "Hey, you want to come sit in?" And I was like, "Sure." And I don't even know if I actually sang or if I just played on it or what, because, I can't remember that I would have, it's like recently he asked me to come and sit in on, he was doing a show here in Los Angeles. And same thing. He said, "Hey man, I'm going to do Dance Electric. You want to sit in?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't even know the words." He's like, "Don't worry, I got a teleprompter." I was like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, and we had so much fun, and it was it was cool.
Cool.
All right. So now I gotta ask you about this because this was the jam, and this album was fire. Jody Watley.
Wait, Mike,
Mm-hmm.
Mike.
Yeah.
Before we go to Jody Watley, outside production, Andre, two things.
Yeah.
One, the song Red Light. That was, first of all, thank you, because that was on my Mac mixtape back in the day and worked very well for me. And two, when you were putting together, wait, before I even ask this question, Mike, are we going in chronological order?
No, do it how you want to do it. It's fine.
Okay, with your new band, I was watching some of the footage of your recent show last week and some of the footage from your America video. Have you changed members in your band?
The band that was with me in New York and on my recent shows are the same guys who recorded the album. The America video was a whole bunch of different guys that I just got for the video because we were just shooting the video for the Barack Obama re-election campaign, and so we were just trying to put something together to kind of tie into that whole thing, and all the proceeds went to his re-election campaign. And so that was a completely separate thing. Same with the Trayvon thing was just me, but I did those things, just for just to bring awareness to the Trayvon thing. In fact, we're going to do a thing, coming up regarding the midterm election thing. So I'm going to try to get some people together to put that thing together. Because part of the reason why I'm even coming back is besides the fact that I love to make music and I love the idea of performing and getting back into it, but it's also to be able to, be a voice and have a voice and get involved in, I guess, some political aspects of what's going on. Because there's, it's like the 60s, we are in a different period, but it's a very evolutionary period where, if we don't get people to look at what's going on and to be aware of the power that they have, because, not to get too political, because, I don't know what, I know this is about something, it's about the music and all that, but the reality is obviously the minority is now becoming the majority. And so, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, everybody, that, used to be sort of, just kind of a footnote and treated like, you're just those people over there. We running things over here. Now the power is going to be in the majority, and they'll be able to make changes on their actual life and their landscape and how things can progress going forward. And so, but what's happening is people are recognizing that they have to try to put in laws to stop the majority from having the power that they're going to inherit anyway. And so they're trying to rig the system, so that the majority isn't going to be powerful enough to make changes. So they're gerrymandering districts and, and so the midterm elections that are coming up are so important to the future of this country on every level, from all the chemtrails that you see that, are basically giving, our kids and our babies, asthma and all kinds of other stuff. The only way all that stuff is going to change, because a lot of these corporations are the ones who are driving all this stuff. The only way it's going to change is if people understand that your vote counts, and if you vote these people in, and these people meaning Republicans, because they're, it's really simple. Republicans are for business, Democrats are for people. It's just that stark and that simple. But people don't understand it because people pay so much money to get people to vote against their own best interest. So part of the reason why I'm coming back is to be a voice for that and to tell people, look, listen, you got to vote. You got to get involved. You got to vote for people that have your best interest at heart so that we don't wind up for my kids and for your kids. I mean, because, if somebody was, swinging an axe or shooting a gun at your baby, you'd completely go nuts, So it ain't no different, from what's going on, but they're just doing it covertly, because they're still threatening your children. They're still threatening you, and they're threatening your livelihood. So anyway, so that's, going back to your original question, was the band, that was for America. The America video was a different. I think everybody was different. I don't think there was anybody in that video that was actually on the record, for the exception of the bass player played on one song. He played on "It's All Right."
Oh, okay. Which is my cut. All right. Jody Watley. I wanted to ask about that first album. How did you meet Jody? And second, did she approach you to produce that album? I'm just curious how you got that particular gig or job.
It's funny. When I was doing the Dance Electric video, the guy who actually did the video was a guy named Bill Parker. And Bill Parker, I don't know if they were married or if they were just in a relationship, but he was in a relationship with this woman named Carolyn Ali. And Carolyn Ali was, I think, managing Jody at the time. But I know they were really close because she's Jody's daughter's godmother. And but, I think, somehow or another Jody, knew that I was going to be over there and, and wanted to meet me and, and so it just randomly happened that she happened to be there when I came there for a meeting. And I knew who Jody was. I wasn't really all that familiar. I mean, I knew obviously who Shalimar was, and she was saying that she was thinking about doing a solo thing, and she had put some songs together, and she played me some of her music and all of that, and asked me if I was interested in writing some stuff, and so I was like, yeah, and she came out to Minneapolis, and we hung out, and And she was so cool. I mean, she was just really, just spiritually, just a really cool person. She had she still is. I mean, she's got the most amazing sense of humor, and, she's just talented. So we started kind of writing and working together, and, I mean, because the stuff she was originally doing was very different from the stuff that I started writing for, because I think she said that she really liked what I did for Evelyn Champagne King, and
okay.
So she was, so I thought, well, I don't like to do the same thing for other people that I do for anybody, because it's like, even, after I did Jody and she became really successful, I wound up getting a lot of, people coming at me like the Vanessa Williams and Pebbles and just every kind of girl, single solo artist, every record label was trying to get me to do the same thing, and I just wouldn't do it because it's like, I did that for Jody, and so I wound up, I had just met L.A. and Babyface, because there used to be a club in L.A. that everybody used to hang out at, Eddie Murphy, you name it. Everybody used to hang out at this club called Carlos and Charlie, and so I met L.A. and Babyface, and they were in a group called The Deal, and they were there hanging out, and they were saying they were doing production stuff, and I said if I had any people that I could refer them to, and I was like, hey, if I hear anything. And so so it was just a networking thing. And so when I decided I wasn't going to do all these different groups, I kept saying, hey, there's these groups, these guys, The Deal, and they're doing a production thing, kind of like the Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis thing, they're really good, blah, 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 blah. Let's hook them up, let them do the Pebbles thing. I did the thing on Beverly Hills Cop, but but I wasn't interested in doing the album. But these guys, they could do the album and blah, 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 blah. And then they got Mercedes Boy and they got a hit, and blah,
wow, right.
and then I think there was some Patti LaBelle stuff. I think, definitely hooked up with the Vanessa Williams thing. And they sent me a Christmas card and, they were like, thanks. So, yeah, I'm like, hey, and that's just, again, it's just how I am. It's who I am and how I am.
Wow. So you had hooked them up with Pebbles?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I told the label that, these guys, check these guys out. They could probably do the album, because I used to be really close with a guy named Lil Silas, who actually I think was the executive producer on that project, because he was trying to get me to do Pebbles' album. I didn't even want to do the song originally, because I just thought, it's not really cool to do the same thing, for, that I was doing for Jody for everybody else. I just, that concept hadn't really connected with me. I just thought that's not really cool to, give somebody else the style that you worked on for somebody else. Although that became, what everybody did eventually.
Right.
It's just, everybody just did everything for everybody until everybody sounded the same. And that's, to me, part of the problem now is that, you get every producer doing the same thing for every artist, so then they all sound the same. I wasn't interested in doing that. And, again, that's why, when I did the space music with the Surviving in the 80s stuff, and even now, it's like, I'm just trying to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, I can do what everybody else is doing. I can do that stuff in my sleep. But it's like, I'm not interested in doing that. I want to do something different. I want to, bring people to a different place. I don't want to bring them to the same place. I mean, what fun is that? That's not growth. It's like, I want to take them somewhere else on a different journey. Open people's minds up and have them experience something different. And, with the next album that I've already, written, it takes it even to another level, and then, like you said earlier on, I'm going to get into some funk, because I love funk. I love to play funk. I still love to play bass. Mm-hmm. A funky beat is a funky beat, but I just think in terms of trying to express myself as an artist, and to say some of the things that I like to say in music, it's kind of hard to be able to express yourself in such a way, that you can, in certain kind of rock-driven songs. You can it's just more, with the guitars and things like that, you can talk a different language, mm-hmm. And so, with funk, you can talk a different language there. But there's a lot of people doing a certain amount of, a certain kind of funk. They're not doing the kind of funk that I would do. Because I just, I know what you're talking about, and I know what when you think, man, I want to get some of that original, I know exactly, I got some of that stuff, I could actually play it right now. But, the thing is, yeah, but it's just, it's like, it's about this right now, and I'm trying to do this thing and get this thing off, and if I can get it rolling and kind of get to the point where people, pay a little bit of attention to me, I want to really bring people up on, where things are at. And I want to get involved in helping this world, take it to the next level, and represent Bob Marley and Curtis Mayfield and James Brown and some of those guys did, back when they had the platform.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just, take the money and run. They took the money and elevated, their platform. I always thought that a lot of artists that I, grew up with would probably do that, and they haven't. And so it's like, what, maybe that was my job, and maybe I slept. And so I got to come back and I got to get that right. And so whatever I got to do to try to get to that point, then I'm going to get to that point. And then maybe I was always meant to be the kind of artist that, was the people's artist that, stood up for the people and did music and stood in the crowd and, and talked to Congress and went up to Capitol Hill and, and was vocal about it and put my career on the line, to make sure that people were represented, and just because I was famous, I didn't leave people behind, and so, I just never thought of it that way. So I'm just trying to go back and, and do what probably I was supposed to do in the first place.
Okay. You brought up some interesting things. talked about music and how it sort of started to stagnate and stay the same. And, I can kind of see where, you brought up Jam and Lewis, and you have Babyface, transition into Teddy Riley and, Timberland. It's sort of like it became more about the sound of the producer as opposed to the artist. But I was curious, what do you think music is now compared to when you guys was coming up and doing it? Like, is there an opportunity for musicians to sort of be on the forefront?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I'm coming back. It's like, music used to be powerful. I mean, think about it. Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, Bob Dylan, John Lennon, they were singing about love, peace, soul, blackness, power, and it's not that, people aren't still doing that, but it's just, the message gets so muddled when it's, when you're calling, women bitches, and you're talking about Martin Luther King, somebody who died for us to get to some of the points that we're at, and people talking of, cracking jokes about Rosa Parks, and you start to lose, a little bit of the cachet that was built, and then you start pairing with, nothing against, but you start pairing with other artists that, and literally blurring the lines,
Hilarious.
And, and then, and then you got, then all of a sudden Justin Timberlake, not that he's not talented, but then, it's just, you start, and then it's American Idol, and then it's a big giant talent show. And then, and before you know, Lady Gaga is just completely Madonna, and it just starts becoming, it's like, before you know, it's just a hodgepodge of a bunch of stuff that it all basically sounds the same. It's the same producers, it's the same beat, it's the same rhythm. It's all the stuff, and I'm not somebody who's just mad or anything like that. And I'm like, like they were when Elvis came out, or like they were when the Beatles came out. It's just because it'd be different if I couldn't do that stuff, But I can, and it's not even that. It's just, can they do what I do? No. And so it's like, so it's not that. It's just that music was powerful, and it has become marginalized, and now it's just background noise, and it's just, people have made almost a joke out of music, and people don't even want to pay for music anymore. And to a large extent, how can you blame them? Because people can go on GarageBand, and they can make the same music, or they can go on Logic, or they can go on Pro Tools, and they can just, anybody can. I read an article where Zoo was saying that I can make my beats in my bathtub. That's fine. That's great. But if that's not marginalizing music, because if anybody can make a beat in their bathtub, which is fine, but who wants to pay for that?
Right.
It's like there's no value to that anymore. It's like they can get a beat anywhere. And anybody can come up with a beat. Anybody can tap on a thing with their fingers and come up with a beat, especially when they can listen to somebody else's beat and emulate that, and then all they got to do is just say some stuff over the beat, and if they can come up with a clever enough thing to say, then there you go. But, everybody can't spend time and learn how to actually play an instrument. And everybody can't take time and actually learn how to, tell a story, or learn how to say something, turn a phrase and all that other kind of stuff, and say something that actually has power and depth that goes beyond, just talking about meeting somebody at a club. It's like, the lyrics that are on this album and on the album that will be following this album up, it's deeper than that. And it's not going to be something that everybody's going to be into. I understand that. But I think the people that do get into it, are going to go for a ride. They're going to go on a journey. And I'm going to be happy to take them on that journey, and I'm going to take that journey somewhere else. That hopefully that journey will lead, to being able to putting music back to a place where it will be powerful again, and it'll mean something, and can have some sort of impact on people's lives, other than just, me making money or somebody making money or whatever. It's just because, music business is a different business now. And so it ain't so easy where you just sign a record deal in some big record company. Record companies screwed things up so bad that they ain't even making money anymore. So, they shot themselves in the foot,
right.
By not, for one, by not actually, taking artists, by doing exactly what happened, cookie cutter, artistry and having every producer make everything sound the same until there was no more value. There's no, nobody had any identity anymore. People don't want to pay for that stuff. Who wants to pay for something when they can get something for free? You got something else, just somebody else on the corner selling the same thing, only different. What's the difference between theirs, who they're giving it away for free or for, you can buy their record for, $2, or paying for some record company's record, where you're paying $15 or whatever it is now, and because obviously now it's come way down. But, it just people start going, hey, if I can get this stuff for free, and they have no loyalty because there's no artist anymore. But when an artist becomes an artist, then people go, you know what, I want to support him and I want to support what he's doing because he's got a message and he's trying to do something that has depth and it has meaning and it's going to help not just me, but it's going to help the future. He's not doing it just to make some money or just to try to get some girls and, whatever. It ain't even about that. It's about actually the power of music. What music originally was. Because if you go back, and I don't want to get too philosophical, but if you think about the power of music, the beginning, go back to the very beginning, when people lived in villages, how people found out about what was going on in the world outside of their village was there were minstrels who actually would sing songs about what happened in this village, and they go to another village and say, this village over here does this and does things this way. And they go, oh, wow. And they were like the newscasters. And then they go to another village. And that's how they became powerful, because they were telling stories about what was really going on and how people needed to do different things and raise themselves up and blah, 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 blah. And, that's the power. That's the origin, the original power that music had. And that power is just now, it's just so, when you get American Idol and The Voice and all that other kind of stuff, and that's a talent show. And yeah, people can sing, and that's wonderful. To be able to, to do all of that kind of vocal gymnastics and all that kind of stuff. And that's wonderful if that's what you're into. But there's a whole nother thing that music is all about, and that's power. Power to tell stories, power to tell things like it is, like they are, to tell who's doing what, and make people listen to it because it's in a story, in a 3-4 minute song, where you got to cut right to the chase. You can't meander around, about what it's all about. It's like, look, the American dream, it's alive and well, my brother. Alive and living color. Dream, American dream. Don't you let them try to take it. It's yours and you can make it. Dream. That's what it's all about, and on and on. Different songs on my album, It's All Right, that song that you said you like, that's my life, in a sardine can, basically. It's like, it's about a brother who says, I'm going to shine a light, I'm going to get some sun, going to rock the world, going to be the one, going to make some cash, going to live it up, going to spend it fast. Well, it's all right. And then he starts talking about, I think at the end, then it's like, got to find a friend because I need to vent. All my money gone, don't know where it went. And then it's like, got to find a job because I need some cash, going to save it up, going to make it last. Well, it's all right. Got to find a girl because I need some sex. Got to make some cash for what comes next. I'm going to build it up. I'm going to tear it down. You're going to watch me fall. You're going to watch me drown.
That's the struggle, man. That's the struggle right there.
Yeah, that's the struggle. That's the yin and yang of life. But these are the stories that, I'm telling a story right there that, I'm putting my life on the line, and it's like it doesn't have to be that way for somebody who actually picks up on that. And when you're going through your struggle and you hear that song, you go, wow, you know what? He's saying he's going to build it up. He's going to tear it down. And we've all been there. I've had kids, and I was always there for my kids, but, I didn't understand how to really be a man in a relationship like that. You're a husband and what, sacrifice and all of that was about, because nobody told me about that. One of my older brothers was a pimp. So I just completely didn't. I had a completely different way of I mean, I grew up where a man was how many women you had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it took me a while to understand that that's what a man is somebody who's, is committed to a certain, if you say you're going to be committed to a relationship, you're committed.
Do it, right.
And I didn't understand that. And, obviously I built things up and, and then I tore them down because I didn't understand how it worked, until it was too late. So, I mean, that's what all these stories are about. And, I mean, I could go on and on with different songs on the record. And one day, obviously, was, about being tight with somebody and, and then, and maybe not being so tight with them, and then hoping one day you get together and you could become friends again. So, I mean, it's just story, and, and that's what it's all about.
Well, man, I want to thank you for coming on, and a couple last things. First of all, Sean and Big Sexy, did you guys have an additional question before we wrap it up here? Let me make sure you got.
Yeah, I have one. Andre, you talked about music and influences and the different groups that you like. Is there any current artists that you're hearing now, or groups that catch your ear, or someone that's in your iPod currently that you like, or an artist that you heard and say, I could, let me get them in the studio and I can, do such and such with them. Is there anyone like that?
Well, I'm not in the mode of, in the producing mode right now as far as that's concerned, because I'm really, I'm in the artist trying to do my thing mode. But there's a lot of artists. There's an artist from, I think, London called James Blake, he's got this song called Retrograde that is just, you should check that out. That's one of the tightest songs. And then there's I like Gary Clark Jr., as far as that's concerned, he's doing some kind of rock. He's kind of like a Chuck Berry kind of thing. I like Leanne La Havas. I saw her. There's a lot of artists doing a lot of things. There's, I like that Arctic Monkey song. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out. I mean, that I've always been a fan of music. I mean, that's the thing. I think the quickest way to lose touch, is to quit being a fan of music. And the one thing that I've always been, and I probably will always be, is just a fan of music. I love music. It's not like I'm not one of those kind of people who say, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I listen to radio all the time. I buy records, I buy new people's. I'm always trying to find new artists. I'm trying to discover stuff. There's this group called Tame Impala that, they're doing some psychedelic stuff. There's just a lot of stuff out that, as far as that's concerned, and it's just, I'm just one of those kind of people that are all over the map because I just love music. I love funk. I love rock. I love jazz. I love blues. I've gone back and rediscovered, old music from back in the day. It's just music. It's just, if it speaks to me, I respond. It inspires me. So I'm not one of those kind of, somebody who lives in a box or a bubble. It's just, I love music too much to just like one kind of music. I mean, it depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in a mood where I just want some funky music, I'll either go back, to some of the funky music from where I know, the time stuff came from, and I'll listen to some of that, or I'll listen to some, or I'll listen to some Time, or I'll listen to some, some Jesse Johnson, or I'll listen to some, some NWA, or I'll listen to some, some Chuck D. I love Chuck D. Fight the Power is like, that was my jam.
Yeah.
And on. Slick Rick. I loved hip hop. I was like so into hip hop.
Okay.
When hip hop came, people thought I was crazy because I was into hip hop way before, DJ Quick. I was into like straight hip hop. I was trying to turn people on to hip hop back then, and people thought, man, why are you listening? And when I tried to make Jody's album, the album that I was going to follow up with hers was almost just like what they came out with what Dallas Austin did for TLC. I had a song, that I had loops and samples and all kinds of stuff for Jody's follow up, and she thought it was too hip hop, But like I said, I just think that, if you're a fan of music, you keep your ear to the ground, you stay a fan of music. You keep listening to different things because, if you're into it, you're into it. And if it speaks to you, it speaks to you. And you make music that, you follow your heart.
All right. Big Sexy?
I had to step away momentarily, so I apologize.
Okay.
Excuse me. First of all, it was cool that you mentioned Circle Star. I've been there a few times when I was a kid to see the Ohio Players, so I know exactly what you were talking about. But working with other artists, you mentioned this name, and I saw it online, and Mike mentioned this name. What was it like, and how did the Tom Jones thing come about?
That's a funny question. Tom, oddly enough, Tom Jones reached out to me, and I have no idea why or how, but he reached out to me and said, Andre, listen, I'd love to work with you, man. And I was like, Tom Jones, this is like, when I was a baby, I remember hearing, was it Delilah or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow. And I was like, okay, cool. And he invited me to his crib. And I'll never forget, man, this is one of the funniest things, man, because, again, being from that other side of the railroad tracks, it was like one of those kind of things because he had this big mansion in Bel Air, right? And I go in his crib, and he's got, like, literally a pond or a brook or something in his crib separating his living room from his kitchen. You had to literally walk over a bridge to get from his living room to his kitchen. And I'm like in the crib and I'm like just tripping out because I'm like, man, this is like dope. I'm like, whoa, man, this is like the shit. And I'm like, what's that smell? And he's like, what smell? I said, there's this smell, man, that I keep smelling. And he's like, does it stink? I was like, no. It's that, it's just something, I never smelled it before. It's like really, really, and it was driving me crazy. And he was playing me all these songs and telling me, yeah, I want to do something like this. I want to do something like that. But I was obsessing with this smell. And I'm like, I kept going, God, what is that? And I kept looking around at the house and all this stuff. And, and finally I just started laughing. He was like, why are you laughing? I said, I know what the smell is. He said, what? I said, that's the smell of money. That's the smell of straight up cash, man. Like, I was looking around and he had such amazing stuff, man. And we actually got to be really good friends. And, because I think he was signed to Interscope and, they wanted to really control what he did or something like that. And so they were, I had done, eventually, they kind of split us up and they wanted us to go through the whole record label thing because he had contacted me outside of the label. And so then they brought me back into the thing because he was adamant about having me work with him. So, but they didn't let us, I didn't get a chance to work with him the way I wanted to work with him. And then we were doing a thing with the Soulmates, which was me, Mick Murphy from The System, Paul Peterson, and Gardner Cole, who did Madonna's Open Your Heart. We had put together a group called the Soulmates, and we had done an album. And, and Interscope was interested in signing the group. But then they heard a song that was on there that they must have played to Tom that he loved, which was a song that I had written and the other guys wrote some of too. And he wanted to do that song, which is a song called Something for Your Head. And so they wound up, wanting to do that. And so they wanted me to come, they wanted me to produce it, but they wanted me to produce it with Teddy Riley, which was weird because, the song was already done. And Tom wanted the song the way the song was, but they wanted Teddy Riley because he had, he was the man at the time. He was a hot producer. And so they wanted to have that whole thing so it could say produced by Teddy Riley and, whatever else, so we wound up going to Virginia Beach, and then we had to wait around a few days for Teddy to get unbusy so that we could, actually do it together. So I wound up hanging out in Virginia Beach for like 3 days with Tom Jones and his son, which was a trip because, we got to hang out and, I got to hear all kinds of Tom Jones stories, man. And, it was just really, really cool to understand. Because this dude is like an icon. It's like Elvis. It's like hanging out with Elvis, only different. Some of the stories he was telling was just, it was blowing my mind. And, the funniest thing was it's like, because Teddy, I mean, that brother runs with a posse. He like, at the time he had a posse of about 10 brothers and bodyguards and the whole thing. So it was funny because we went into this restaurant. It was a really uptight, I guess just a really swank restaurant somewhere in Virginia Beach. And so we roll in with like literally, I don't even know how many. It was like a ton of people. And, all the people in there were looking at us like, who are these? A bunch of black people coming into this restaurant. They were like looking at us. And so me and Mick were there, and we were with Tom. And when we came in and they saw Tom Jones coming in, all of a sudden it just changed. And they were like, oh, my God, that's Tom Jones. And so we sit down, and then, I mean, it wasn't long. People like, women were coming up. Do you remember me? I threw my panties at you. And it was like, it just turned into a really hilarious. And so I was like, by that time I got to know Tom real good. And so I was like teasing him. And I was telling him, I was saying, yeah, I said, the closest I came was this woman threw a bra at me, and and then the hook of the bra strap got caught in my fro. It was like, and it got really, because I had to literally, it was crazy because this actually happened, and so we were just having fun, man. It was just really, it was cool to get to know him because he, when you get to know people like that, it's just, and you get to know them on that sort of that same level. You get to know the person, not the icon or anything like that. And he just turned out to be a really, really, humble, cool person. And I mean, we literally laughed. I mean, we just had so much fun. So it was a blessing just to get to know him.
All right, right on. All right, Mr. Cymone, I want to say, man, thank you for being so forthcoming and honest on this, man. This was definitely a blessing. And last thing, if you can do, and anybody who knows about these shows that we do, yeah, we talk about the music and we get into other stuff, but I really like to keep it on a real personal level because as we talked about earlier, you do what you do. You're excellent at it. You're a man. We are men. You've been through some different things. You've seen some avenues and journeys that we haven't. And so you're able to give us some different insights into different things. Now, you've been in the music business for a while. You've been in entertainment for a while. You're a son. You're a father, right? You're a husband. Mm-hmm. Take us out in terms of give some of the younger dudes who have aspirations to be in entertainment or in music, but now that you've been through a lot of different things, and you still, like you say, you're still a student, no doubt, but you've experienced a lot of different things. You've been through a situation where you and your man came up, your man goes on to do some other different things. You go there, you come back together, parents and different things. Give us a little insight on how can we navigate, how can we go through these different struggles that we go through in life and not lose our damn mind? Like, what kept you sane? And now that to me, this is the last thing, and I'll shut up. But the other important part is, and I think it's great, because you're a father. I'm one. I know Sean is, and then obviously your dad. What have you learned, and what can you teach and share with us as men so that we can continue to grow, and again keep our head about ourselves and keep that commitment that you talked about earlier that a man would have when he learns to become a man? I know I'm putting a lot on your plate there, but take it however you want to do it.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's really simple for me. I mean, for me, it's about keeping it simple. And my religion is God is my conscience, so I let my conscience be my guide. That's first. And I mean, we're all a product of the genius of God. That's second. Okay. And then, it's like my philosophy is, like the record, the song on the record called Naked, and I had another song called Strip. It's about, taking everything away, imagine yourself just naked on the planet Earth, just the dirt, the sky, no buildings, no cars, no nothing, and then tell yourself what's important. And you'll find out that's the answer. It's people, it's your family, it's this planet. And that's how I was able to stay sane, to be honest, because you know, there's so many things that I went through. I mean, it's not been an easy journey by no stretch. It's been crazy. I've had so many things that have been really, really crazy go down. But, you know, through it all, I managed to stay sane, mostly because of that, because of those philosophies. You have to develop and adapt, you know, some kind of a philosophy that works for you, you know, and that's what worked for me, you know, and just keeping it simple. I mean, because really, I mean, you know, music business comes and goes, you know, fads, trends, and all that kind of stuff come and go. And, you know, I mean, the one thing that I would tell somebody is find your purpose sooner than later, but it doesn't matter whether you find it sooner or later, but find your purpose and just be that. Try to be the best person you can be, you know, and then eventually, you know, I mean, it'll all come together, you know, because that's what it's all about. You know, you got to find who you are, find your purpose, you know, and then find a philosophy that works for you, and everything else will fall into place. I mean, you got to also recognize when you're off your path, when you're off your journey, because you're off your journey when things aren't going right for you. You're on your journey when things are going right, you know, and it's really simple. You know, it's really, you know, it's not like, you know, it's really rocket science, because if you understand, you know, your conscience, you know when you're doing the right thing and when you're doing the wrong thing. You know, you can't fool anybody else. You can't fool God, you know, if you believe in God. So, you know right from wrong. You know if you're taking something that don't belong to you, you know that ain't right. You know, if you know that if you're involved with something that you shouldn't be involved with, you know that's wrong. You know it. You may try to, you know, convince yourself that it's right, but deep down, you know, because it's your conscience. Your conscience is saying, you know, that's wrong, but you're going to do it anyway. And, there's so many times when I knew I was doing the wrong thing, but I did it anyway because I wanted to, or I was naive and I didn't understand. I knew that it was like there was going to be repercussions, but I somehow or another in my mind justified it by whatever I used to balance it out, you know, and to make it seem right. But at the end of the day, I knew it was wrong. And that's how I developed the fact that, you know what, my conscience always knew. So once I got in line with my conscience and the fact that I knew it was right and wrong, all of a sudden good things happened for me. You know, and anytime I was in sync with my conscience, everything happens for me, because it's, you know, God doesn't, you know, put you on this planet to be bad. You're born naked. He gave you everything you need. So, you know, it's like, it's all there. You got to figure it out. And I think I've figured it out for me. And it's that I'm born naked. God is my conscience. My conscience is my guide. I know when I'm doing the right thing. I know when I'm doing the wrong thing. Try to do the right thing, and things will turn out right. It's just that simple.
All right. Thank you for that wisdom, sir. For the people
You're
looking
welcome.
for your album and information about you and tours, where can they find you online?
You know, you can AndreCymone.com, or you can go to AndreCymone@bandcamp.com, and, you know, I mean, it's all there. Everything you need to know, the records, you know, what I'm up to, what I'm doing, what I'm about to do, what I'm thinking about doing, you know, there's a lot of things that I'm going to get involved in the future. And I really want to get people, you know, on board, because I want to create a movement, you know, but a people's movement that's for the people, with the people, you know, so that we can all be a part of this thing. Because, you know, like I said earlier, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and you know, I can't do this stuff by myself, and I'm not interested in doing it by myself. And I think that this is where we all come together and we make this world for our kids and for our kids' kids a better place. And if people are interested in that, that's what I'm all about. And I need people to come with me. So go to AndreCymone.com and let's start this new revolution, you know, because it's going to be a revolution, and it ain't going to be easy. It's going to be a heavy lift, but this journey is going to be a journey that's going to have to happen. And, you know, and it's only going to happen if people get involved. If people don't get involved, then, you know, what's going to happen from not being involved is not going to be a pretty sight.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know. Go to the website, support this brother. It's a blessing. Keep on. We waiting for the next record. We're going to hold you to your word and get that funk from you whenever you're ready. We're ready.
Okay.
No doubt. Big shout out to Mr. Day Droppin', who I could not find again to get on this interview, but shout out to you, sir. Shout out to Big Ken as well. And to the brothers that are here with me, Big Sexy and Sack, thank you, sir. And
my pleasure, Andre. Thank you for coming out.
Right. And Mr.
My pleasure.
Mr. Sean Hill, thank you as well.
Thank you for having me, and thanks again, Andre.
All right.
You're welcome.
And a shout to Catherine. Is that your wife?
Yes, it is.
Shout out to her. She definitely very responsive and getting back to me, and I really appreciate that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what we do. This is podcastjuice.net. This is Michael Dean. Enjoy your day. Peace.